Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Had Card Shuffling and Drawing Quirk, which is 2 Overpowered movie. Before we start, please go support President Thanos for writing that awesome fanfic. Ryukyu is on patrol, just a few minutes from heading back for the day when she hears something in an alley. It sounds like whimpering and labored breathing, sounds she knows all too well. Someone's hurt. She rushes forward to find a skinny, middle school boy, covered in blood, playing cards scattered around, barely alive. If you've seen any of my other stories, then you know how this goes. Izuku doesn't get OFA because of reasons. The person who does in this story is someone I haven't seen have it before, and that's Theus, 1 Hanta 0. Chapter 1 Tragic Find. Ryuko Tatsuma, also known as the Dragoon hero, Ryukyu, she also recently became the number 10 hero in all of Japan. Although she wouldn't let her new rank go to her head, it was nice. Currently she was walking through the city her hero agency was based in, going through her morning patrol. She was just about to head back to her agency to get some lunch when her heightened hearing picked up some strange sounds she became accustomed to in her hero work. Slow, labored, weak breathing, and soft whimpering. Someone was hurt, badly. She ran towards the alley she heard the sounds coming from and found a boy. He was skinny, had green hair and eyes, and his face was covered in small freckles. He was wearing a school uniform, suggesting he wasn't even in high school yet. She crouched down near him and took notice that he was covered in blood, deep scratches, and abnormal burns. Quickly she took out small rags she kept on her in case she needed to stop some bleeding. It wasn't working. She picked the boy up, put him on her back, ran out to the street, and transformed into her dragon form to carry the boy to a nearby hospital. She radioed to the hospital that she needed an emergency team on the roof. When they came out, they took the boy and took him to the ER immediately. Time skipped 6 hours. Ryuko had been in the hospital for hours. The doctors actually worked pretty fast. The boy was just taking a while to recover the lost blood and wake up. She had been allowed in his room just an hour after he was stabilized, and a woman who appeared to be the boy's mother appeared after a while. They sat there in silence for a while until the woman spoke up. "You're the hero who found my son, right?" Ryuko, not expecting the sudden conversation, replied. Ryuko: "Yes, I am. I heard his injured breathing in an alleyway. When I got there, he was a mess. Although I do have a question for you, Ms. Midoriya, Inko Midoriya, but you can just call me Inko. You saved Izuku after all. What's your question?" Ryuko: "Inko, would you have any idea why he'd be surrounded by playing cards?" Inko's eyes then threatened to spill out tears as she started to cry. Inko: "It's his quirk. Whenever he draws a card from a deck, something happens. He must have tried to defend himself." The woman then completely broke down and Ryuko rushed over to hug her. While in the hug, she noticed something about the burn marks she couldn't see before because of the blood. Ryuko: "Explosion burns?" Inko then froze and backed away to look at Izuku again. Inko: "Did you just say explosion burns?" Ryuko: "Yes, I did. Those burns, the only thing that would create this pattern is a source of quick, hot blasts, like explosions." Inko then made a quick phone call to a friend of hers, telling her to get to the hospital with her son. They appeared within the hour, and Ryuko explained her explosive findings, asking the two if they knew anything. Suddenly the mother punched her son in the stomach, yelling, "How could you do this, Katsuki? He was your friend." Katsuki, yelling, "That loser thought he could be a hero. Look at him, he's scrawny, and his quirk needs cards. A weakling like him should know his place." Inko then walked up to the woman and put her hand on her shoulder. Inko: "Mitsuki, if you wouldn't mind?" The woman, now known as Mitsuki, simply nodded as she stepped aside, and Inko threw what must have been the hardest punch she could to the boy's face. After that, Mitsuki apologized profusely to Inko, who knew she never would have raised Katsuki that way, so she forgave her. Mitsuki promised to punish him at home thoroughly. Izuku woke up nearly 2 hours after the Bakugos left. Both Ryuko and Inko were there, asleep in separate chairs. The only reason they weren't kicked out when visitation ended was because of Ryuko's top 10 status. His movement when he woke up was caught by Ryuko's hearing and woke her up. When she opened her eyes, she saw the boy looking around, and she saw his eyes light up when they passed by her. Izuku. Oh my god! Ryukyu, hi, I'm such a huge fan. New mentor. Ryuko looked at the now conscious boy with confusion on her face. Ryuko. So instead of questioning why you're in the hospital or whether or not you're alright, your first concern is that I'm here? Izuku was about to answer when Inko suddenly tackle-hugged him into the bed. After a few minutes of crying, she asked him why he didn't tell her about Katsuki's bullying. Izuku. I didn't want you to worry. With Dad overseas for so long, I figured you already had more than enough on your plate. This caused another round of near flood-level tears to come from the elder Midoriya. Once that was finished, Ryuko spoke up once more. Ryuko. I apologize, but me and your mother have to go. My rank has kept us here for this long, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna kick us out in a few minutes. Though before we go, I have a proposition. And is. What? Ryuko. I heard you want to be a hero, Izuku, so I have decided that I'll train you. Wait, I can call you Izuku, right? Sorry, I just assumed since you're both Midoriya. Izuku. It's fine, Ryukyu. Wait, you're gonna train me? This caused the Dragoon hero to chuckle. Ryuko. Yes, I will, and if it makes you feel any better, you may call me Tatsuma. The boy nodded and the two women left the hospital for the day. 2 days later. Ryukyu and Izuku are standing on a beach, which had just recently been cleaned. People were saying it was a boy with weird-looking elbows. Right now the hero was talking with Izuku about his quirk. Ryuko. So, say you had a deck of hero cards, would that summon the hero, give you power, or create a temporary copy of the hero? Izuku. I actually tried that before on Death Arms. He wasn't amused to be teleported to some 10-year-old kid's room. She merely nodded at the new information. She asked another question. Ryuko. What do basic playing cards do? Izuku. Each suit does something different. Hearts let me charm people, clubs make me stronger, spades make me sturdier, and diamonds are kinda like a flashbang. The number is what determines how powerful they are. Ryuko. Sounds interesting. I'd say the only things we can work on are your basic strength, which just means you have to work out, draw speed, which is just practice, and your collection of powerful cards, which will cost money. Izuku looked down, as if he was upset. Feeling her gaze on him, he spoke up. Izuku. I don't really feel right with you spending all that time and money on me, Tatsuma. Ryuko placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. Ryuko. Nonsense, Izuku. I chose to train you, so I'm prepared to lose time and money. Now get up, we've only got 6 months till the UA entrance exam. This seemed to cheer the boy up, and they got to work. 5 months later. Izuku had grown with his training. His overall frame didn't change much other than being a few inches taller and slightly bulkier. The only way to really notice he was working out was to catch him without his shirt on, which was rare. He had just finished practicing his drawing speed when Ryuko walked up to him. Ryuko. Alright, you've grown a lot, Izuku. Now I've come to ask you something. Izuku. Thanks, Tatsuma. What is it? Ryuko. I've come to ask if you would like a recommendation. It's clear you don't need it, but I'd figured it'd be a more passive way to get back at the Bakugo boy. There's still an exam, but you'll have less opponents. Izuku stood there for a minute, thinking. Just as she was about to speak up again, he nodded. Izuku. I'd like that, Tatsuma. Ryuko. Good. You can go home early. Tell your mom not to cook, I'll bring some food. Izuku. Actually, the Bakugos are coming over tonight, so you might want to make extra. If that's okay with you, of course. Ryuko thought about it for a few seconds. Ryuko. Sure, besides I'm looking forward to seeing that kid's face when he finds out I've been training you myself. They both laughed at the thought and headed in their respective directions. When Izuku got home, he told his mom about Ryuko's plan, which got her laughing too, so she went along with it. The Bakugos showed up after a couple hours, and to mess with Katsuki more, Izuku was wearing a tank top to show off his arms. The parents laughed when Katsuki almost lunged at Izuku after seeing him, the green-haired boy, but on a shirt after that. Then Mitsuki piped up. Mitsuki. Inko, I don't mean to intrude, but you're usually cooking when we come over. Inko. Oh, a friend of Izuku's said she would cook, she'll be here any time now. A knock was heard from the front door. Izuku. Speak of the devil. He walked over to the door, opened it, and let Ryuko in, who was carrying like 5 pizzas. She walked towards the table and set them all down. Ryuko. I didn't know what everyone liked, so I just got cheese. As the Midoriyas assured her that just cheese was okay, the Bakugos sat in silence, for different reasons. Mitsuki and Masaru were trying not to laugh, as Katsuki was turning red in pure rage as he realized what was going on. He may have been rude and an asshole, but he wasn't stupid. He made the connections: Izuku's new physique, his sudden casualness with a top pro. He exploded, literally. He used his quirk to launch himself out of his seat and towards Izuku, only to be caught by Ryuko. Ryuko. I will not be having you attack my student in his home while we all try to enjoy dinner. She then put him back in his seat and handed him a plate with slices of pizza on it. Everyone, minus Katsuki, enjoyed the evening. Eventually everyone left and Izuku went to sleep, excited for the recommendation exams the next month. Recommended entrance exams. Izuku had trained immensely for this day, the day of the UA entrance exam. Well, he was taking the exam for recommended students, which there were only 6 for the hero course, including him. Their recommendation sponsors had to be there too, so Ryuko just flew him instead of them taking separate trains. As they walked onto UA grounds, many teenagers were walking past them, some even asked for Ryuko's autograph. They were pointed towards an area they were told would Gym Gamma. When they walked in, they were met by the other recommendation students and their sponsors. However, Ryuko did most of the talking. While yes, Izuku's confidence had gone up, most people there were from wealthy families or were the children of heroes, so he wasn't his most confident. Eventually a girl with black hair and a ponytail walked up to them and introduced herself. Hi. I'm Momo Yayarozu. Who are you? Izuku. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Yayarozu then tilted her head in confusion. Yayarozu. Midoriya? I've never heard that name before. What business is your family a part of, or are you related to a hero? Izuku was nearing his social interaction limit for the day, which Ryuko could tell from the way he started shaking. Ryuko. It's neither Mississippi Yayarozu. I trained him myself and gave him the recommendation. It is rude to assume anything. Yayarozu. Oh, I'm sorry, Midoriya. Good luck in the exams. Midoriya. You too. Ryuko. You've already made a friend, Izuku. Izuku. I guess I did. Huh. Then someone walked onto a raised platform in the center of the giant gym. He was small, white, and furry, and he walked up to the microphone to speak to the students. Hello everyone, I am Nizu, the principal of this fine establishment. This caught everyone's attention and made them turn to face him. Nizu. Now that I have your attention, welcome to the recommendation exams. Would the sponsors please make their way to the stands? Ryuko patted Izuku on the back and walked over to the stands. When she sat down, some Mentos came out and changed the outer ground in a circle into an obstacle course. Nizu. Now that everything is ready, the practical will be a simple obstacles course. The rules are that you can't injure other competitors, but you may impede their progress. The first to the finish in 1 lap is the winner. Now would the examinees please step up to the starting line, please? The students all did as they were told. Izuku looked around and estimated the course was just under half a kilometer, quarter of a mile for my fellow Americans. The small rodent then counted down and yelled go. Izuku drew a card out of his pocket. He had brought a deck of playing cards for the exams. He didn't want to show off his powerful cards just yet. To his luck, he drew a 5 of clubs, which made his muscles almost double as strong. He used his strengthened legs to zoom into 3rd place. He was behind someone with red and white split-colored hair, and a guy with a wind quirk. He then drew another card, a 3 of diamonds. He then threw the card. Since it was only 3, it wasn't that bright, but was still a distraction which let Izuku get past the split-haired boy. They were almost halfway when the boost from the 5 of clubs had run out. He drew again and pulled out an 8 of hearts. He knew what to do and yelled out to the wind guy. Izuku yelling, Hey wind guy, do you think I could be in 1st place? WG yelling, Sure thing, my friend. He then slowed down and let Izuku take the lead. As Izuku passed him, he drew a 6 of diamonds and threw it backwards, The shine was bright enough to make the person in fourth close their eyes. They were nearing the end, but just as Izuku was about to cross, the split-haired guy blasted past him while sliding on some ice. Izuku was able to get second and Yaoyorozu got third. Apparently the wind guy took Izuku's 8 of hearts so well that he voluntarily went all the way down to fourth place. When everyone had passed the finish line, Cementos came back and put the gym back to normal. The sponsors came down to talk to the students. Izuku didn't know what happened, but he could see how Ryuko steered clear of Endeavor, and how Endeavor gave him a glare. He asked her about it when she reached him. Ryuko, so you picked up on that? He got upset that you were able to pass his son, you know, the one with 2 hair colors. He even had the audacity to say you didn't belong here because of how you're the only one without successful parents. Just ignore him, okay? You did amazing, by the way. Nice thinking getting that wind kid to slow down. You definitely passed. How about we get some pizza on the way back to your place and us and Inko can celebrate? Izuku, I'll take you up on that. After a while, Nizu came back onto stage. Nizu, you all did amazing. I know not all of your quirks were good for this, but this wasn't a test to see how good your quirks are, but how you all problem solve to get past something your quirk isn't specifically suited for. Since your recommendation, students, you all get in. All of a sudden the guy with the wind quirk rose his hand. Nizu. Yes, Mr. Yorashi? Yorashi. I thank you for this, but for personal reasons I won't be attending UA High. Nexu. I understand, maybe you should try for Shiketsu, it's just as good as we are. I wish you a successful life. Yorashi bowed towards Nizu and walked out. Nizu. Well then. You will now be handed score sheets that will also show what class you will be in. You will also receive your uniforms in the mail tomorrow. Good day. Ryuko then flew Izuku home and ordered the pizza. She left after eating with the Midoriyas. Just before Izuku entered his room for the night, Inko asked him a peculiar question. Inko, what do you think of Tatsuma, Izuku? Izuku froze, thinking of his response. Izuku, she's nice. I mean, she offered to train me and give me a UA recommendation. She's also a really good friend. I would say she's my best friend, but she's also my only friend. Inko, nonsense. What about that Yaoyorozu girl from the exams? Tatsuma said she seemed like she wanted to be friends, wouldn't you? Izuku smiled. Izuku, yeah, I would. Though Tatsuma is still my best friend. Inko nodded and let her son go into his room, noticing the slight red color that grew on his face when she asked the question. Izuku fell asleep, happy that he got in, and that he actually had friends, even if it was only 2. First day. It had been 2 weeks since the entrance exams, and it was the first day of classes. Izuku woke up, showered, and quick put his UA uniform on. He decided to put 3 small containers on his belt to hold his cards. One held just a normal deck of playing cards, and the other held a deck made up of many different trading card games, and the last held a deck of hero cards for emergencies. He packed his bag and rushed out of the apartment, grabbing some toast and an apple on the way out. When he arrived, he had a hard time finding the classroom. He eventually found it and walked through the big door. He saw someone with blue hair and glasses berating Katsuki for putting his feet up. The blonde was about to respond when he saw Izuku. Katsuki. How did you get in here, Deku? You weren't at the entrance exams. Izuku. Kinda hard not to with a recommendation. Before Katsuki could say anything else, the glasses guy who had said his name was Ida while yelling at Katsuki started yelling at Izuku. Ida. And you. Why do you have those things on your belt? That is extremely unprofessional for a UA student. Izuku. Ida, was it? They're for my quirk, okay? I need them. Ida grew red with embarrassment. Ida. My apologies, I didn't know. Izuku put a hand on the boy's shoulder and laughed, which eased Ida's embarrassment. Then Izuku heard someone say his name. When he turned around, he saw Yaoyorozu. Izuku. Nice to see you're here too, Yaoyorozu. Yaoyorozu. Yes. I too am relieved that I know at least one person in my class. Then they heard a commotion at the door. Their teacher had shown up and told them to go to a small training ground right outside the school with PE uniforms on. When they got to the locker room, Izuku noticed there wasn't a belt for him to clip his cards to, so when they got changed he asked Yayorozu for some rope to tie the containers on. They all gathered outside. When a girl named Uraraka asked about orientation, Aizawa said UA can do whatever they want. He then went on to tell them about the Quirk apprehension test and how if they fail, they'll be expelled. Then a girl with pink skin, named Ishido, said that wasn't fair and their teacher described how life wasn't fair. He called Katsuki up for the first ball throw, and he made it to 705 meters. The tests went by in a blur. Izuku mainly used his playing cards. He was able to get 3rd to 5th in most of tests. The final test was the ball throw, and Izuku was last. Before he threw the ball, Aizawa spoke up. Aizawa. Midoriya, you've only been using playing cards, use something else for this last test. Izuku. Why yes sir. Izuku decided to use a card from his flashiest deck, the hero deck. He also decided to be a little dramatic. He slowly reached into the container, slowly drew the top card, and called out the hero name. Izuku yelling, I summon Ryukyu, the Dragoon hero. In a bright flash of light, Ryuko appeared, confused until she saw Izuku. She walked up to him and smacked him in the head. Ryuko. I thought I told you those cards are only for emergencies, Izuku. Izuku. Sorry Tatsuma, Mr. Aizawa wanted me to use something other than the playing cards to throw a ball, and the hero deck was the only one that would consistently give me a strength-based outcome. Ryuko chuckled, grabbed the ball from Izuku's hand, transformed, and threw it over a kilometer away. She told Izuku to behave the rest of the day and flew away. Izuku managed to get 4th overall. Once the tests were over, they were told to get back to the classroom and get to know each other until the school day ended. Izuku was the last to walk in. When he did, everyone started introducing themselves, even Katsuki surprisingly. Eventually it was Izuku's turn. Izuku. I'm Izuku Midoriya. My quirk is Deck Master. I like heroes and Katsudan. People then started asking him questions. Mineta. How do you summon Ryukyu? Can you do more hexy women? Izuku. It's my quirk, and why do you want to know? Ashido. How do you know Ryukyu? Izuku. I was hurt bad and she found me, then she offered to train me. She's also my best friend. Hagakure. That's so cool. Izuku. I guess it is, huh? Tokoemi. What exactly does your quirk do, Midoriya? Izuku. It makes cards I draw from decks have effects. You saw what happens when I draw a hero trading card. Kaminari. That's amazing. Izuku. Thanks. The day soon ended and everyone went home. Ryuko was at the apartment when he got there and talked with him and Inko about his first day. She left soon. After that he relaxed before going to sleep. Battle training. The class were sitting in their seats, getting increasingly excited with each passing moment. Today was their first practical hero lesson. They were each trying to guess who their teacher was going to be. Some thought it would be Snipe or maybe Cementas. None of them expected All Might to come through the door though. He walked over to the podium at the front of the room and told the class they would be having battle training. He then pressed a button. He had that ejected numbered briefcases from the wall that had their suits inside. They were instructed to get changed and meet the symbol of peace at Ground Beta. Everyone walked out of the tunnel connected to Ground Beta, except Izuku. All Might asked where the green-haired boy was. Izuku, slightly echo-like Cause Tunnel. I'm here, sorry, my cards spilled out. AM. It's fine, young Midoriya, as long as you're here. All Might then started the lesson, and revealed that most villains stay indoors and that's where the battles would take place. He then had the students draw lots to decide the teams. Izuku ended up with C, and so did Zero. When All Might revealed who they would be fighting, which would be Team H, made up of Jiru and Katsuki. All Might. Team H are the heroes, and Team C are the villains. Villains, you have 5 minutes once you're in the building to hide the bomb and plan. Heroes, I suggest you use that time to strategize. Katsuki scoffed at the thought of working with someone. He was just going to go after Izuku after all. Izuku and Zero, however, actually liked to work with others. They put the bomb directly in the middle of the whole building. As they walked out of the room, Izuku drew a card, smiled and placed it in the doorway. Zero didn't try, but he knew there wasn't getting it off the ground unless Izuku wanted it. Zero. What is that? Izuku. A card from an old trading card game called Duel Monsters. This type is a trap card. It's known as Swords of Revealing Light. If someone I see as my opponent or enemy steps through, 3 swords made of light will stab into the ground around them and stop them from moving. Zero looked amazed and just nodded. They continued to strategize. They knew Katsuki would just go for Izuku, so Zero would just defend against Jiraiya. Izuku warned him that Jiraiya is most likely stronger than she seems. Just then, the buzzer went off to signal the start of the battle. They could hear Katsuki's explosions as he rocketed in their direction. Zero split off from Izuku as Katsuki found them. The explosive teen rocketed towards Izuku, who caught the punch he was throwing, and threw him over his shoulder. Izuku. You always start off with that right hook of yours, Kaken. Katsuki used his explosions to escape from Izuku's grasp. He rocketed back towards the green-haired boy, who had just pulled a 4 of spades out, which made him sturdier and more resistant than normal. Izuku punched Katsuki in the stomach as the boy's explosion did nothing but singe his hair a little. Izuku. I'm done being your punching bag. I'm here at UA. We both are, so grow up and deal with it. Then a large sound wave could be heard that brought both teens to the ground. Izuku quickly drew another card from his power deck. He didn't expect to find a card from the only game he didn't know much about, but it was better than nothing. Izuku yelling, I summon Onyx! Suddenly a giant, snake-like rock creature sprung out of the card. Izuku yelling, Onyx use dig to go stop Jiraiya. The creature did as it was told and dug into the ground. The sound stopped in a few seconds. Izuku got up and walked over to the now unconscious Katsuki. He couldn't withstand the sounds as well as Izuku could since he had the boost from the 4 of clubs. Sudden All Might's voice came from the PA system. AM. Villain team wins, both heroes are incapacitated. Come back to the viewing ASAP. Izuku picked up Katsuki, walked to the bomb room, removed his trap card, and went to the viewing room, where Zero already was with Jiraiya. Zero, however, was unconscious and Jiraiya was covered in rocks and dirt. Her sound wave had knocked the super strength and tape user out. The only reason Jiraiya was considered incapacitated was because the onyx dragged her down to her waist into the ground. Izuku walked over to the girl. Izuku. Sorry about the onyx, I just thought it would hit you. Jiraiya. It's no big deal, I didn't expect it, that's all. Your quirk is pretty cool and powerful, unlike mine. Izuku. No, it's not. If I don't have my cards, it doesn't work. Meanwhile, you can do so much with yours. You can jab people with your jacks, plug them into speakers to create devastating sonic attacks, and even use them for surveillance. The rest of the matches went by smoothly, and most of the class had a good time. At the end of the day, everyone went home. Izuku called Ryukyu and talked to her about the battle. He went to sleep, not prepared for the danger he would face just 3 days later. USJ. Izuku was standing with the rest of his class outside UA, next to a bus. Ida, who was recently voted class representative, was trying to get the class on the bus in an organized order. The type of bus completely messed up his plans, though. As the bus was on its way to the area the class would do rescue training, they were all talking about their quirks. Many pointed Izuku's out as the strongest in the class. He denied those claims on the basis that he needed cards to do anything. The bus soon reached its destination, and the class got off. A hero in a space suit walked up to them and introduced herself as 13. She walked them inside what she called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or the USJ. As she was telling the class how dangerous quirks can be, a giant purple portal opened up in the center of the USJ and people started coming through, followed by a man covered in hands and a giant man-thing with a beak and an exposed brain. Kirishima. Whoa! They even have fake villains! Aizawa. No, Kirishima, those are real. Everyone evacuate now, I'll deal with them. Izuku. But Mr. Aizawa, your fighting style is for one-on-one and ambush situations, you won't stand a chance. Aizawa. You can't be a hero with only one trick, Midoriya. Aizawa put his goggles on and sprinted over to the villains to fight. He was holding his own very well. Just then a man made of purple mist appeared and introduced himself as Kurojiri. Kurojiri. We were informed All Might would be here, Was there perhaps a change of schedule? Katsuki and Kirishima charged him before 13 could activate her quirk, but they passed right through them. In retaliation, Kurogiri warped half the class to different areas. Izuku fell through a warp gate and landed in some water. Just before a shark-like villain could bite him, Ajui, or as she likes to be known, Tsu, saved him and brought him to the boat in the middle of the water zone. Mineta was there as well. Tsu's presence in the zone made Izuku come up with an idea. Izuku, we might have a chance to win this. Mineta, how could you say that? Look at them, they're dangerous. Izuku, think of it this way, why would they put Tsu here when they could have put her in the fire zone? Tsu, you're right, Midoriya. Karo, do you have a plan? Izuku nodded, reached into one of his containers, and drew a card. He smiled and called out the name that was on it. Izuku yelling, I summon the number 5 hero Miruko. In a flash of light, Miruko appeared in front of the heroes in training, in a t-shirt, sweatpants, and one slipper. Miruko yelling, What the hell? Why am I here? Izuku, sorry about the Ms. Miruko, we're UA students and the USJ is kind of under attack. He pointed towards the water with the villains in it. Miruko looked at the water, and back to him. Miruko, oh, you must be that kid Tatsuma trained. I've got nothing better to do, I'll help. With that said, she kicked off the only slipper she had on, and jumped into the water. She got back onto the boat after a few minutes, and said it was clear. The 4 then swam towards the center to try and get their bearings, but they didn't expect what they saw. Aizawa with his head pinned to the ground by the beast with his arm in its other hand. The handman was talking to Aizawa. Just then he lunged toward Tsu at impossible speeds. Not even Miruko saw him coming, although when he touched her face nothing happened. Handy. You really are cool, Eraser. A foot then met the side of his head as Miruko had evidently heard enough. When he recovered he looked at her wide-eyed. Handy. What? You weren't supposed to be here, how? Then Kurogiri appeared, addressed the man as Tamura Shigaraki, and explained how Ida had gotten loose. Shigaraki. Grr. If you weren't our only exit I'd have decayed you by now. Just then the sound of someone yelling caught the villain's attention. They looked to see Izuku had drawn a card. Izuku yelling, I summon Red Eye's Black Dragon. A huge dragon, with jagged black scales and glowing red eyes appeared. Izuku. Red Eyes free Mr. Aizawa. The monster did as it was told, and picked the creature off of Aizawa and dropped it in the water zone. Izuku. Take Mr. Aizawa to the others by the entrance. As the dragon took the unconscious hero, the monster jumped out of the water and landed next to Shigaraki. Shigaraki. Well, aren't you a little nuisance? Nomu, kill the green-haired brat first. The creature now known as Nomu charged at the boy, but its fist was stopped by one of Miruko's kicks. Miruko. This thing punches as hard as All Might. Good, I wouldn't want this thing going down too easily. Their battle then began. Miruko was getting some hits in, but she mostly had to defend. Eventually she was slowing down while the beats looked like it had just finished warming up. There was a punch Miruko couldn't dodge, then another and another. Eventually she was on the ground, Nomu standing over her, and it raised its giant fist. Just before it hit her, however, a large crash was heard, as All Might broke down the USJ door. He quickly took care of the remaining villains. Then he made his way over to the center, and started battling Nomu. He was doing well, until Kurogiri ended up putting them through a warp gate, but Todoroki's eyes freed All Might and let him keep fighting. Izuku couldn't help as he had to help Miruko get to the entrance. By the time they get there she was walking just fine. They then heard All Might shout plus ULTRAA, and watched the Nomu go flying. Then the rest of the UA teachers appeared but Shigaraki and Kurogiri got away. Miruko left before the police got there so she wouldn't have to deal with any paperwork. Dragon's Heart. Just before Izuku got on the bus to go back to UA to change, he heard the familiar sound of giant wings flapping and something heavy land on the ground. When he turned around he was met by a human Ryuko running at him. She then pulled him into a hug. Ryuko. Yusujiyama told me what happened. Are you okay? Did you get hurt at all, Izuku? Izuku. I'm fine, Tatsuma, really. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't expect you of all people to be this worried. Izuku blinked so he didn't see it, but the woman's cheeks went red for a split second. She then pulled him off to the side away from other people. Ryuko. Of course I'd be worried. You're my student and someone I'd call my friend. I'm just glad you're okay and remembered to use the hero deck correctly this time. This time, Izuku pulled her into a hug. During the hug she felt her shoulder get a little wet and heard small sobs coming from the boy. Ryuko. What's wrong? Is it something I said? He then spoke softly in a voice so quiet the only way she heard it was because of her enhanced hearing. Izuku sobbing. Thank you, Ryuko. She noticed the new usage of her first name, but simply brushed it off. She rubbed her hand on the top of his head a little to calm him down. Ryuko. What exactly are you thanking me for, Izuku? Izuku. For saying that I'm your friend. For the longest time I never had a true friend, but then you came along and saved me, and offered to train me. When we were on that beach I felt like I could truly be me. Not the completely shy shut-out loser I was at school, and not the quiet keep-to-myself person I was at home. I could completely nerd out around you without fear of being ridiculed. You were the first person to make me actually laugh in years. That's why I call you my best friend, and I thank you for that. Ryuko hummed in thought. As a result of her hero work she had done interrogations before, and could tell when she wasn't getting the full picture. Ryuko. Is there something else on your mind, Izuku? At this point the boy had stopped crying but still wouldn't break the hug. Izuku sighed before answering her question. Izuku. Yeah. But if I say it you probably won't want to be friends anymore. Ryuko grabbed his shoulder, gently pushed him away, and made him look at her. Ryuko. There is nothing you could possibly say that could ever warrant that kind of response, Izuku. He nodded and sighed. Izuku. Alright, just don't say I didn't warn you. Ryuko, I like you, like you, and I know, you're a hero, I'm a student. I'm only 16 while you're 26. I know these feelings aren't just hormones, I've felt them for a while now and they don't go away. He looked back up at her to see a shocked expression on her face. This apparently wasn't what he had expected because he just ran over to the bus with what looked like tears in his eyes. Ryuko was still processing the new information. Izuku liked her? She couldn't deny the boy was cute, and that she herself had grown a similar attachment to him, but he was right. She was a hero, she was 26 while he was a 16-year-old hero student, and her student too. Then a small voice in the back of her head spoke up, which only usually happened when her draconian side saw a particularly pretty piece of gold. Draco voice, but what's so wrong with that? She could normally resist the voice, but this time, she agreed with it. He clearly liked her, it would be consensual, and Inko had been hinting at it for the past 2 weeks. She knew what she needed to do. She transformed and flew towards a familiar apartment. 2 hours later. Izuku had just gotten home, both physically and emotionally drained. One from the attack earlier, and the other from what he could have sworn was a rejection of his feelings. He took his shoes off, walked towards the kitchen where his mother was. Inko. I'll call you when dinner's ready, we'll talk about what happened later, for now you should rest, no doubt you're tired. Izuku. Okay, Mom. He reached his room and opened his door. When he turned the light on he saw someone he didn't expect. Ryuko Tatsuma was sitting on the edge of his bed, as if she was waiting for him. She patted a spot on the bed next to her. He sat down without a word. Ryuko. Izuku. I want you to know I didn't mean to hurt your feelings earlier. Izuku. I know, Tatsuma, I know. Ryuko sighed, and pulled him into their third hug that day. Ryuko. But you don't. You ran off while I was still processing what you told me. By the time I came to my senses, the bus was pulling away. Izuku stiffened at this, only now realizing just how fast he ran off. She continued to speak. Ryuko. Izuku, back at the beach, there were days where I couldn't save people, this happens to every hero, but you know what kept me from getting upset at myself? Izuku. What? Ryuko giggled at his ignorance. Ryuko. You did, Izuku. And if I'm going to be honest, that's only the tip of the iceberg. I could talk with you better than anyone else I knew, which included Usajiyama, who I've been friends with since I was a child. Izuku looked up at her with a face of mixed confusion, curiosity, and desperation. Ryuko. Over those 6 months we grew close, Izuku, and even now we're not done. Izuku Midoriya, even if I'm a hero, and you're a student, even if this technically could end my career and yours before it even begins, I like you too, and I'm ready for anything that might come our way. She put her finger and thumb on his chin, lifted his head up, and placed a gentle kiss onto his lips. They parted after just a few seconds. Izuku looked ecstatic at her confession. Izuku. So, does this make us? I mean, only if you want. She gave him another kiss and spoke when she separated. Ryuko. Yes, we are together, Izuku. Izuku. Thank you, Ryuko. Ryuko. I like it when you say my name. Izuku. Well, I guess I'll start saying it more, okay, Ryuko? She nodded, he then yawned. She chuckled and laid his head down on her lap. He fell asleep fast. She then heard a small creak and a click. Her ear whipped up to the door, and she saw Inko walk away. They'd have to tell her about them when he woke up. Going back. UA had given the students the rest of the week off because the security system was being upgraded to detect warp gates. Over that week, Ryuko was at the Midoriya apartment whenever she had the chance to be with Izuku. The fact they were the same height made everything easier too. Izuku was standing in front of the 1A door, preparing for the many questions his classmates might have about what he did during the attack. He opened the door and got dragged inside. Immediately questions started getting thrown his way. He was able to answer most of them as they were mainly questions about what happened and why Miruko was there. The last question threw him off though, as he thought nobody saw. Ashido. So, Midori? Why'd Ryukyu drag you away before letting you on the bus? Hagakure. Yeah, I saw that too, what happened? Mineta. Wait. You were alone with the Toto BA. Tsu promptly slapped little Perv into a wall with her tongue. Izuku. Well, you see, Ryuko was just worried about me. I'm her friend and student, of course she would want to make sure I'm okay. He looked at his classmates' faces, and saw a mixture of disbelief, shock, and he may not have been able to see Hagakure's, but he could tell she wasn't convinced. Hagakure. So, first names on both ends now? Izuku froze. He forgot he never called Ryuko by her given name in front of anyone but his mom before. Ashido suddenly got in his face. Ashido. What's going on between you two? Tell me more, please. Just then Aizawa opened the door with only a cast on his left arm and a bandage over his left eye. Everyone rocketed to their seats as he walked over to the podium to begin the day. Aizawa. 5 seconds, you're all getting better. Now I'm here to make an announcement, your fight isn't finished just yet. This caught everyone's attention and made them grow worried looks. Many were thinking there were more villains. Aizawa. The UA Sports Festival is coming up in 2 weeks. Your heroics lessons will be cancelled until then to allow you all to train. Or you could use the time as a small vacation if you think you're strong enough, but if you do that there's a big chance you'll be left behind by the rest of the class. Do with your time what you will. Now pay attention to the rest of your classes. Izuku raised his hand. Aizawa. Yes, you will have to register your cards as a support item. You can only bring one deck, however, so choose wisely. If you truly want to, you could bring your hero deck, though I assume Ryukyu would drop you into the ocean if you did. Aizawa then walked out of the room, and as if on cue, Izuku got a text from Ryuko. Ryuko, don't you even think about it. Izuku chuckled and put his phone back in his pocket and went through his day. Ryuko was waiting in his room when he got home. Ryuko. So I heard the sports festival is close. You gonna train for it? Izuku. Of course I will. I felt like my draw speed was lacking during the USJ attack. Ryuko. Well, good luck. I would help, but I don't want to play favorites between my students. Izuku. Even though I 100% am your favorite student? Ryuko nodded, walked over to him and gave him a quick kiss. Ryuko. You're always going to be my favorite, just wanted to give Hato a little bit of a chance to catch up. Izuku laughed and gave her a kiss of her own. They hugged for a minute before Ryuko had to leave. As she was walking out the front door, A thud was heard as she accidentally ran into a man. Ryuko. Oh, I'm sorry, are you alright? The man got up and looked at Ryuko curiously. I should be the one apologizing. I almost tried to go in your apartment. Do you just so happen to know where Inko and Izuku Midori are? Ryuko. You have the right apartment, I was just leaving. She could see the man breath out a little fire and a sigh of relief. Ryuko. You wouldn't happen to be Hisashi Midoriya, would you? Hisashi. You would be correct, yeah. Ryuko grabbed his arm and dragged him inside, while yelling about a guest. Inko and Izuku came out to find Ryuko dragging Hisashi over to the couch. They then made their way to the living room. Hisashi. Surprise, I'm home. Izuku hugged his father for the first time in years. Inko practically broke the couch with how hard she jumped on him. When they separated, they started talking about all that happened. He eventually asked a question. Hisashi. What's the number 10 hero doing here anyway? Izuku looked at Ryuko, who smiled and nodded. He stood up, walked over to her, grabbed her shoulders, and gave her the biggest kiss they'd shared yet. They separated and looked at Hisashi, who was speechless. Izuku. That's what, Dad? He didn't speak, he just sat there. Ryuko, Izuku, and Inko all started laughing. Eventually they calmed down and let Hisashi talk. They told him what had happened in the past 7 months. Ryuko eventually left, and Izuku prepared to train for the sports festival. Sports festival. It was the day of the sports festival. Class 1A was standing out in the middle of the arena along with the other classes. Katsuki had just given his speech, which was just him saying he was gonna win, and now Midnight was on stage next to wheel that she spun. When it stopped, it landed on obstacle course. The classes then lined up at the exit tunnel. The buzzer sounded and everyone charged into the tunnel, and Todoroki froze the ground, trapping most of the students, minus a few from 1A. Izuku was one of the few who avoided it. He had jumped over the freeze wave and drew a card. Izuku yelling, I summon Clayman. A man, or golem, made of clay appeared. Izuku, distract Todoroki. Clayman ran up ahead and started throwing clay globs at Todoroki to keep him busy while Izuku ran to catch up. He was in third behind Todoroki when Clayman had taken too much damage and disappeared. Izuku stayed in third until the second obstacles, a giant pit, so he drew another card. Izuku. I summon Bulbasaur. A small lizard-like creature with a plant on its back appeared. Izuku then picked it up. Izuku. Use your vines to swing us across. Bulbasaur. Bulba. Izuku jumped down into the pit as Bulbasaur's vines wrapped around the columns, made to allow students to cross. The creature disappeared after they were past the pit. Izuku kept running until he made it to a minefield. The pit took a while, so at this point he was in 5th place just behind Sue. He rushed through the minefield, his natural speed being just enough to make it past if he tried. He ran through the finished tunnel and came out, still in 5th place. After everyone had come through, Midnight appeared again, and announced the next event to be a cavalry battle. First place in the obstacle course got 10 million points, so Izuku was thankful he didn't get first. He quickly found himself a team made out of Uraraka, Tokoemi, and a support course student named Mei Hatsum. The buzzer for the start went off and nearly everyone went after Katsuki's team for the 10 million. Izuku, however, had his team stay on the outskirts and away from others. He even saw a guy with purple hair talking to people then taking their points. Izuku's team managed to snag some more points using Dark Shadow to stay in the top 3 cavalry teams. The game ended with Izuku's team in 2nd place. They were told to go eat or rest while Cementos made the area for the fighting tournament. Zero could be seen being dragged off by Todoroki. As Izuku was walking towards the cafeteria, he was suddenly pulled into an empty room by someone. When he flipped the light switch, Ryuko was sitting near a table with a lunchbox next to her. Izuku sat opposite her. Ryuko. Nice work during the race, Izuku. I figured you'd be hungry, so I brought some lunch for the both of us. Izuku. Thanks, Ryuko. I'm starving, I couldn't ask for a better girlfriend. Ryuko chuckled as she took out the sandwiches she brought for them. Neither of them noticed the flash of pink that walked away from the door when they stopped talking. Ryuko. Thanks, I could say the same for you. Now enough talk, let's eat before you have to get back out there. Izuku nodded and ate his, mostly in silence, but he couldn't help but compliment the way she made them. When they were done eating, she packed away the container and went back to where she was sitting in the stands, but not before giving Izuku a good luck kiss. When he got back to the 1A seating area, about half the class was giving him curious looks, but he brushed it off as wondering where he went for lunch. He soon found out his match was first, and he was up against the purple-haired guy from before. Ojiro walked up to him before he left. Ojiro, be careful around him, Midoriya. Don't say a word around him, that's how he got me. I talked to him, and next thing I know I'm carrying him on my shoulder. Izuku nodded and walked down to the concrete pad. He and the guy, now known as Hitoshi Shinso, were standing opposite each other. Then Midnight asked them if they were ready and started the match. Izuku rushed the boy before he could say anything, and pushed him out of bounds. Shinso. So that's it, huh? All that work for nothing. You must think you're the best with a quirk like yours compared to my villainous one. Izuku. Nonsense, no quirk is villainous, it's what you do with it that counts. Yours is some form of mind control, right? Way better than mine that needs cards to function. I'd say all you need to do is train, get stronger and faster. You would have beaten me if you dodged and got in my head. Shiso smirked at the small pep talk and took the hand Izuku reached out to him, and let Izuku pull him up. They went their separate ways. By the time Izuku got back, the whole class was looking at him weirdly. The rest of the first round went smoothly until Siro had actually managed to somehow get Todoroki to use his flames. But he lost when Todoroki burned all his tape and froze Siro. The second round was up and Izuku was against Todoroki. He got up and walked to the fighting area, prepared to get his ass handed to him, but not after putting up a good fight. Midnight started the match and Izuku quickly drew a card. Izuku yelling, I summon Dark Magician. A man wearing purple robes and wielding a staff with a green stone at the stop appeared. Todoroki immediately sent flames at the monster, but they did almost nothing. Izuku. Dark Magician attack. The magician sent green blasts towards Todoroki, who avoided them and sent ice towards it. Eventually the magician disappeared, but Todoroki was severely overchilled. Izuku drew once more, and the card he drew was perfectly timed. Izuku yelling, I summon Firestorm Prominence attack. A large alligator made of fire appeared and started to walk towards Todoroki. Todoroki had been thawed from the heat of Firestorm and started to subconsciously use both his cold and fire in one move. The rapid condensation and expansion overwhelmed the monster, causing it to disappear, and it knocked Izuku all the way back into the tunnel, while knocking him out. Relationship revealed. When Izuku woke up, he was in the infirmary. The clock said it had been hours since the sports festival ended and everyone went home. Well, almost everyone. Izuku looked to his left to see Ryukyu sleeping, her head resting on her arms on the bed. On his right was Yaoyorozu, head back, snoring, waiting for her friend to wake up. He nudged Ryukyu with his knee, causing her to wake up and look at him. Ryukyu. Good morning, handsome. Enjoy your nap? Izuku laughed. Izuku. Did you enjoy yours? Ryukyu. Yes, I did. But I know something I'd like more than a nap. She scooted her chair closer to him, he leaned forward and they kissed. They quickly separated when they heard a gasp from the other side of the bed. They looked to see Yaoyorozu, awake with a hand over her mouth. Izuku. Please don't tell anyone. Yaoyorozu composed herself, and told them something that shook them to the core. Yaoyorozu. Ashido already told us, I didn't believe it but I guess there's no denying it now. Ryukyu. How did she find out? Izuku. I swear I didn't tell her. Wait. Maybe she heard us talking over lunch. Izuku took out his phone and called Ashido. She picked up and he put it on speaker. Ashido. Hello? Izuku yelling. How could you? That is private business between me and Ryukyu, not something you can just tell people. She could lose her license if this got out. She responded, but he didn't hear her. He was already freaking out, worried that Nizu was explaining everything to the Hero Commission and getting them to revoke Ryukyu's license, as well as finalizing expulsion papers. At this point, tears threatened to spill from his eyes at the thought of Ryukyu not being able to be a hero because of him. He was brought out of his thoughts by the feeling of being embraced. When he looked up, he saw Ryuko with her arms around him. Ryuko, whispering, "It's going to be okay. I said I'd be ready for anything when we got together. You're more important to me than my job, okay? You always will be, Izuku." Izuku nodded and leaned into her more, to feel safe. He then heard Ashido's voice come from his phone. Ashido. "Hey. Midori? You still there?" Izuku. "You don't get to call me Midori anymore, not after this. You can only call me that once you gain my trust back. Good day, Ashido." He hung up the call and put his phone away. Yayorozu had already left, saying her driver was getting impatient, leaving Ryuko and Izuku alone. "Izuku, I know you said you were ready, and I am too. It's just that I didn't expect it to happen so soon, Ryuko." Ryuko hugged him tighter. "Ryuko, I didn't either, but that's just how life is sometimes." He brought a hand up to touch hers. "Izuku, I love you, Ryu." She smiled at the cute nickname. "Ryuko, I love you too, Izu." Izuku looked up at her and gave her a kiss. "Izuku, I just want to go home and lay down in my own bed right now." "Ryuko, want me to fly you?" Izuku nodded and she picked him up. When she got outside, she put him on her back, transformed, and flew to the Midoriya apartment. She used a spare key they gave her, took Izuku to his room and laid him down on his bed. She told Inko and Hisashi what happened and they got worried too, but she reassured them that she was ready. She called in sick for the rest of the day and stayed by Izuku's side. Yue gave the students a couple days off to rest after the festival. The next school day, Aizawa walked into the classroom of 1A, expecting a loud group of teenagers, but instead they were all quiet, but most of the class was staring at two other classmates, Izuku Midoriya and Mina Ashido. Izuku was also glaring daggers at Ashido, who was looking away with an ashamed look on her face. No one had noticed him walk, and so he just sat down and watched. Hagakure spoke up at last. "Hagakure, come on, Midoriya, you can't be mad at her forever. We were gonna find out eventually anyway." This was apparently the absolute wrong thing to say, as Izuku got redder than Aizawa had ever seen him. Izuku yelling, "It wasn't her secret to share, Hagakure, not only that, it could have ended both mine and Ryuko's Kara's." Aizawa couldn't believe it, but he had to restrain Izuku. The boy, who was always calm and collected, had lunged at the invisible girl out of rage. Aizawa, "All right. I'm not amused. Ashido, principal's office now. Midoriya, it's clear this concerns Ryukyu, so she'll be there too." The boy just nodded as Aizawa wrapped Ashido up as well and dragged them both to Nisa's office. Ryuko appeared shortly after and Aizawa explained what happened in class. Ryuko looked at Izuku with loving concern in her eyes. She could see the shame and anger swirling in his mind, and she wished she could go over to hug him. The voice suddenly popped up again. Draco voice, "Do it. You want it, he wants it. Screw the others, just do it." It seemed she couldn't argue with the voice when it came to Izuku, so she did it. She leapt over to his chair and hugged him, much to the surprise of everyone minus Izuku. "Ryuko, I know you blame yourself, and by the look in your eyes I can tell you regret getting that upset. You need to learn to control your emotions better, Aizu." Izuku seemed to lighten up a little when she spoke. "Izuku, I'll try, Ryu, I'll try. But I'm just too emotionally connected to this to control them how you want." Ryuko, "And that's okay, as long as you try." A sudden cough from Nizu instantly brought them back to reality. They both looked at each other, then back at Nizu, and attempted to run, keyword attempted. Aizawa was able to capture them before they even took 2 steps and put them together on the couch Nizu had. "Nizu, now I see what all the fuss was about. Ordinarily I'd try to separate you, or report this to the Hero Commission, but seeing how close the two of you are, that would only do more harm than good, so the only thing I will say is this. Please use protection." This made Izuku go as red as Kirishima's dyed hair. Nizu then asked Ashido the big question. "Nizu. Now, Mississippi Ashido. Why did you think it was a good idea to tell people about their relationship?" Ashido. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking. I just heard a juicy secret and spilled the moment I was around people. I talk a lot when I'm around people. I can't help it. I know it won't mean much to you, Midoriya, but I'm sorry, and I agree. Hagakure was out of line earlier. Izuku. I believe you, and thanks for apologizing, but it'll still take a lot more than that to get my trust back. Aizawa unwrapped Ryuko and Izuku as they stood up. Nizu. That'll be all, thank you. Now Ryukyu has patrol to get back to, and you two still have classes. Have a good day. Izuku gave Ryuko a goodbye kiss as she walked towards the front of UA. Once they got back to the classroom, Aizawa started talking as Izuku and Ishido got to their seats. Aizawa. Now that that's over, we can go over the heroes that scouted you after the festival ended. Internships. Aizawa was explaining how several heroes had scouted the class for internships. Aizawa. But before that, you all need hero names. But since I'm terrible at that, we have someone else coming in to judge them. Now remember, these may be early, but they can stick. I'm an example, so make sure they're good or else why. Midnight then burst through the door. Midnight. You'll have hell to pay later. She walked over to the podium as Aizawa slipped into his sleeping bag and sat in the corner to sleep. Midnight passed out whiteboards for the class to write on and present their names. Most of the class had gone up and presented names, and most of those were accepted, except Ishido's alien queen idea, which she swapped out for Pinky. Izuku wrote down his name idea, walked up to the front of the class and showed his name. Izuku. I am the king of games, Deku. Midnight. It's not bad, but are you sure you're okay with that? Izuku just nodded and went back to his seat. Bakugo kept using murder in his name, so Midnight just had him figure something else out after class. She left and Aizawa got off the floor to keep talking about the internships. Aizawa. Okay. Now we can move on. He clicked a remote and the scouting numbers for the students were shown. Even though he got 5th in the tournament, Izuku had the second most scouts, just under Todoroki. Aizawa. As you can see, not all of you got offers. Those of you who did will be given a list of the heroes who scouted you, and those who didn't will be given a predetermined list of 40 heroes across Japan who are taking interns. He then left the room and came back with Midnight and Present Mike. They were all carrying binders of varying sizes. Aizawa. Come up and get your lists. Once Izuku got his, he sat down and started skimming over the list, which was in alphabetical order. He had just flipped into the S section when he thought he saw something. He flipped back to the R section and found it. Izuku, whispering. Nizu, I envy just how much fun you have with us students. On the bottom of the page, in a different font, size, and color than everything else, was Ryukyu. He looked up and into Aizawa's tired eyes, and the man just nodded. Izuku stood up and walked over to the teachers. Midnight and Present Mike looked at him. PM. What is it, little listener? Already have your choice? There's no going back on this. Izuku. I know. And I'm going to Ryukyu's agency. Midnight just nodded and typed out his choice onto the computer when Aizawa spoke. Aizawa. Just get some actual learning in and Nizu won't care. The other two heroes looked at him confused, wondering what he meant, but he answered their unasked question. Aizawa. Ryukyu and Midoriya are friends. In fact, I'm pretty sure they'd call themselves best friends. Nizu doesn't want them just hanging out, not doing hero work. This satisfied the other two, and one by one the rest of the class went up, giving their choices. 2 days later. The class was standing at a train station, hero suits and extra clothes in hand, except Izuku, who just had his hero suit. Aizawa was telling the class to behave. Just as the train pulled up, Siro asked Izuku a question. Siro. Why don't you have extra clothes, Midoriya? Izuku. Because Ryuko picked them up from my house earlier. Speaking of, she should be here, just about now. A thump was heard outside as Izuku finished speaking, and a loud, deep, yet feminine voice was heard. Ryuko Dragon. Come on, Izuku, wouldn't want to keep your teacher waiting, would you? With that, Izuku smiled, waved to the class, and ran out of the station. He climbed onto Ryuko's back and she took off towards her agency. Ryuko. I will be treating you as an intern when we're working, Izuku. But when we're safe in the agency, we can relax. Izuku. Wouldn't have it any other way, Ryuko. She laughed a little and kept flying. After half an hour, she landed on the roof of her agency, transformed, and led Izuku inside. Ryuko. Oh, and Hato doesn't know about us. Though I suspect she'll find out while you're here. Izuku nodded and kept following her. She eventually stopped by a door and opened it, revealing a small room with a bed, closet, and a desk. Ryuko. This is where you'll be staying. Don't worry about unpacking. I already put your clothes in the closet. She pointed to another door some ways down the hall. Ryuko. That is my room that I use when I need to stay at the agency. As long as you're here, I'll be staying in there if you need me. Izuku. So I get the same floor as you? Great. Ryuko chuckled. Ryuko. Yes, it is. Hato has been begging to get this room ever since she joined up in her work study. She gave him a quick peck on the cheek and started to walk away. Ryuko. Get situated, then come downstairs for some lunch. Today's a free day since you just got here. Izuku entered his room, put his hero suit down, changed out of his uniform, and headed down to relax for the rest of the day. He was excited for what this internship could bring. Hato's curiosity. Izuku woke to knocking on his door. He looked at the clock to see it was 8 in the morning. He got up and answered the door, and Ryuko was on the other side. Ryuko. Time to get up. We're going patrolling today, you're with me. While we are patrolling, it'll be strictly professional, okay? Izuku. Yeah, understood. Yon, I'll be out in a minute, Ryu. She smiled, gave him a quick kiss, and left to let him get ready. Half an hour later. Izuku appeared in Ryuko's office and stood next to Hato. Ryuko. Now that Izuku is here, we can start. Hato raised her hand excitedly. Ryuko. Yes, Hato? Hato. Why do you call him Izuku? Why does he get the room? Ryuko and Izuku both chuckled before she answered. Ryuko. Because he's my best friend, of course. I also personally trained him and gave him the recommendation, so of course he'd get the room. Hato pouted but accepted the fact that she couldn't get the room. Ryuko. Now we're going for our morning patrol. Hato, you'll take the southern section while me and Izuku take the northern. And before I forget, Izuku, her hero name is Nijire-chan, what's yours? Izuku. My name is the King of Games, Deku. Ryuko smiled, knowing the personal symbolism he was putting behind the name. Ryuko. Excellent, I believe it's perfect. Now let's go. Hato, or Nijire-chan while she's working, flew south from the top of the building, while Ryuko and Izuku, or Ryukyu and Deku, went north. 3 hours later. Ryuko and Izuku were heading back to the agency for a lunch break, when Ryuko suddenly heard something and started running. Izuku quickly followed her and ran into an apartment building after her. They ran to the 3rd floor and Ryuko busted through an apartment door, to find a man choking what appeared to be his wife. Ryuko leapt to pry him off of the woman, but he had some form of a strength-enhancing quirk, and slapped her across the room. Izuku quickly drew a card and called out the name. Izuku. I activate Black Pendant. A beaded necklace with a black gemstone on it appeared in Izuku's hand. Izuku. I equip Ryukyu with Black Pendant. The necklace disappeared and reappeared on Ryuko's neck. She stood up, now stronger and more durable than before. She once again leapt at the man, but this time, easily pried him off the woman, and pinned him down while Izuku contacted to police. After Ryuko had taken care of the man and consoled the woman, her and Izuku went back to the agency. By then it was 3 in the afternoon, and they were hungry. Once they got back they told Hato what happened, grabbed some food Hato had cooked, but went to Ryuko's room instead of just sitting at the table. When they sat down at her desk, Ryuko took off her dragon claw headband to eat. Izuku. Your eyes are pretty, you know that? Ryuko looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Ryuko. How so? Izuku. I just find the yellow coloring mixed with a slit pupil to be pretty. I also like how they respond to your mood sometimes, like when you're calm the round out, but focused makes them razor thin. Ryuko. Thank you, Izuku, I like the shade of green your eyes are. She kissed him and went back to her food. They ate in comfortable silence, until Hato barged in with some food of her own and sat down. Hato. It's not fair how Midoriya gets to spend so much time with you, Ryukyu. The boy snickered, remembering his first day. Izuku. Just don't let Mr. Aizawa hear you saying that. He'll lecture you about how life itself isn't fair. Ryuko just nodded. The Hato started getting curious again. Hato. Hey, Midoriya. What's your quirk do anyway? I know it's called Deck Master, but what does that mean? Izuku sighed, pulling out his wallet, and placing 2,000 yen into her open hand. She had just won a bet they made before they got back that day. Izuku. You win this time, Ryuko. It makes a card I draw from a deck have certain affects. My hero deck is an emergency deck because hero cards let me teleport the hero I draw to my location. Trading card games just do what they would do in the game, like summon a monster or place a spell. Hato looked amazed and kept asking questions about what cards he carries and other specifics. She suddenly stopped and asked one last question, or set of questions. Hato. Why did you two come in here? Is there something you didn't want me to hear? Am I coming in between your hangout time? Izuku and Ryuko looked at each other and nodded. Ryuko. Actually, Hato, there's something you should probably know. Hato tilted her head in confusion. Hato. What is it? Ryuko and Izuku stood up, stepped towards each other, and shared a gentle, loving kiss. Hato then gasped, and was asking questions faster than the couple could think. It took a while, but they were able to calm her down and answer some of her questions. Her last one wasn't expected. Hato. So now that I know, can Midoriya move into this room with you so I can have the room up here? Ryuko and Izuku turned red instantly. Izuku. Well, that's really up to her. Ryuko. I guess. If he really wanted to, I wouldn't be against it. Izuku. Really? Ryuko. Why, yeah. Why not? Sure, let's do that. Izuku nodded. Izuku. Yeah. Let's. He put his hand over hers and they walked out to start moving his belongings to her room. Once they were done, they helped Hato move into the other room. By the time they were done, it was past 7, so they ordered food and ate. 4 hours later, Izuku and Ryuko were laying in their now shared bed, not really able to sleep. The both simultaneously rolled over to face each other. Izuku, without a word, pulled her close, and she wrapped her arms around him. Izuku, whispering, if being together like this feels this good, I might not be able to sleep alone after this week. Ryuko. Same here, Izu. Do you think Inko and Hisashi will let you, I don't know, move in with me? Izuku. I'm pretty sure my mom would love the idea of that, Ryu. My dad maybe not, but mom will bring him around, I'm sure of it. They shared a love-filled kiss, and fell asleep soon after, wondering what the rest of the week would bring them. After. The week was uneventful. There was one attempted bank robbery, but Izuku didn't even get to do anything because the criminals just surrendered when they saw Ryuko. Now, the internships were over, and Izuku was leaving the agency to head back to UA. He walked out the front door and over to Ryuko, who was waiting by the road. Ryuko. I'll fly you to UA, Izu, then I'll go and ask your parents about moving in. Izuku nodded, looked around quickly, and kissed her. Izuku. I'm sure they'll say yes, Ryu, but good luck anyway. She stepped back, transformed, he climbed up, and she took off. They were at UA in just an hour. Izuku was late, so they decided to make an entrance. Izuku pointed to the 1A classroom windows, and she landed. He knocked on the window, and a very unamused Aizawa opened it. Aizawa. No. Go around. Izuku. I'm already late though. The teacher sighed. Aizawa. Fine. But only this once, now get in. Izuku. See you later, Ryuko. Ryuko. Hope they say yes, Izuku. Bye. He climbed through the window, and she flew off towards the Midoriya apartment. He quickly took his seat and let Aizawa continue teaching. Aizawa. Now, as I was saying before Midoriya decided to show up, you will be competing to see just how much each of you have improved. You can come in now. All Might then walked through the door and started talking. Today you will be racing each other to save a civilian. I will be acting as the civilian and will put out a fake distress signal for you all to race to. Now put on your suits and meet me at Ground Alpha. The class rushed to the locker rooms to put their hero suits on. Once they made it to Ground Alpha, All Might showed the groups that were racing and jumped to a random location somewhere inside the factory-like training ground. Izuku was in the first group, so he lined up and waited for the signal. Once All Might sent out the signal, Izuku drew from his playing cards, and when he looked at it, it was a 10 of clubs, making his muscles 3 times stronger. He quickly zoomed through the factory, passing Zero, who was using his strength quirk, only this time he wasn't breaking any bones. He made it to All Might in just over a minute. Good job, young Midoriya. I'm sure your time with Ryukyu helped you. Izuku. It sure did. Mumbles. In more ways than one. He walked back to the rest of the class, sat down next to a wall, and took a small nap. He woke up after the third batch and walked over to the rest of the class. After a while the last group went, and they went back to class. Izuku sat down at lunch and Yayorozu joined him and started talking. Yayorozu. Did you hear what happened to Zero, Ida, and Todoroki? Izuku shook his head. Yayorozu. They had a run-in with Stain. Izuku nearly choked on his food and Yayorozu laughed a little. Yayorozu. Yeah. But I talked to them earlier and they seem alright. What did you do at Ryukyu's? Izuku. Just a lot of patrolling, really. Yayorozu raised an eyebrow, knowing he wasn't saying everything but let him be. After school. Izuku entered the Midoriya apartment, to find boxes in the living room, and a very excited Inko and Hisashi. Izuku. So I take it you're fine with me moving? Inko ran up and hugged him. Inko. My baby boy is growing into a man. Hisashi. That's a yes, Izuku. The rest of the afternoon was spent by moving boxes into their car and going to Ryuko's apartment. Moving in. Izuku and his parents made it to Ryuko's apartment building after a couple hours of driving. She met them out front and opened the back of the car as they got out. Ryuko. Is this everything, Izuku? Izuku. Everything I'm gonna bring, yeah. Ryuko. I'll bring some of these up. I'm sure you 3 can handle the rest. She picked up a stack of boxes and went inside. The Midoriyas followed shortly, each carrying a box. Once they were in her apartment, they followed her through an open door and put the boxes down. Ryuko. This used to be a guest room, but now it's yours, Izuku. Inko and Hisashi walked up to Izuku, hugged him, and wished him luck, then left. Izuku opened a box and started unpacking. Ryuko opened another one to help him. Izuku. You don't have to help me, Ryuko. Ryuko. Well, I want to. Besides, I need to make sure this doesn't become another All Might shrine. Izuku laughed and continued unpacking. Izuku. Well, it should please you that I only brought a few All Might things. She chuckled and they continued to unpack until Ryuko got a text. Ryuko. Izuku. Izuku. What is it, Ryuko? Something wrong? Ryuko. Usajiyama's coming over. She doesn't know about us. I don't know how she'll react. Izuku. Just go and hang out with her. I'll finish up in here and come out. If she's still here, she'll find out. If not, she won't. We won't let her come between us, now will we? Ryuko sighed, walked over and gave him a quick kiss. Ryuko. No, we won't, Izu. I'll see you in a bit. Izuku. I'll be out soon, Ryu. She smiled, walked out, and closed the door. Izuku heard a knock on the front door after a while and heard the 2 heroines talking. Unpacking had taken an hour to get done, and he could hear Ryuko starting to cook. He went over to the door and was about to open it, when it flew open and hit him in the face. Mirko jumped into the room, having clearly heard him inside. Mirko. Alright, where are you? You picked the wrong apartment to rob, dumbass. She looked around, until she saw Izuku stunned by the door, just laying there on the floor. Izuku. Is this payback for summoning you in sweatpants? Ryuko rushed over to see what all the commotion was, to see her best friend standing over her half-conscious boyfriend. She walked over and helped onto his feet, checking for any injuries in the process. Mirko. What's the recommendation brat doing here? Ryuko. I was going to tell you once he came out for dinner, but now seems better. Izuku nodded in agreement and followed her as she led him and Mirko over to her living room. Ryuko and Izuku sat on the couch, and Mirko sat on the chair. Mirko. All right. What's going on? Izuku. Well, you see. Me and Ryuko. Mirko. Waikyo? I've been friends with her forever and I never got first name privileges. Ryuko. It's because me and Izuku. We're together. We've been dating since before the sports festival. Mirko. Damn it. Now I owe Kayama 3,000 yen. Ryuko. Wait. You're not upset or anything? Mirko looked at her confused. Mirko. Why would I be? He's a good kid, and you're happy. Why aren't you confused over the bet? Izuku. When you watch Mr. Aizawa have to pay Nisa half his paycheck over this, not a whole lot phases you. Mirko. Wow. Anyway, Tatsuma, food's almost done, I think. Ryuko shot up off of the couch and ran up towards the kitchen, yelling that she completely forgot. Mirko and Izuku then turned to face each other, and they started staring each other down. Eventually Izuku blinked and Mirko jumped up. Mirko. Yes, I'll take that. Ryuko called them over to the table soon after, and they ate. Mirko left after dinner. Izuku went to his room and laid down on his bed. He was about to fall asleep when he heard the door open, then close, then he felt someone crawl into bed next to him. Izuku. I was wondering when you'd come, Ryu. Ryuko. I almost forgot you moved in, to be honest. This will take some getting used to. Good night, Aizu. I love you. Izuku. I love you too, Ryu. Good night. Final exam. The class was standing outside one of UA's many training grounds, with Aizawa standing in front of them, waiting for their final exams to start. Aizawa. Before we begin, does anyone here think they know what you're going to be doing? Ashido started jumping up and down with her hand up, and Aizawa called on her. Ashido. We're gonna be fighting robots like the entrance exams. Normally you'd be right, Ms. Ashido, but not this year. Nizu crawled his way out of Aizawa's capture tool and jumped down to the ground. Nizu. But because of all the incidents you students have been through, we're changing it up this year. So instead of fighting robots, you'll be fighting us, the staff of UA High. The other teachers walked out from where they were apparently hiding, lining up alongside Aizawa and Nizu. Nizu. You all will be split into teams of 2 who will then fight one of us. Don't worry, a student from the support course made us special weights to hinder our movement. Now we've already chosen your teams and opponents, based off of various variables. Nizu started listing off the teams and who they'd be fighting. Izuku was on the last team. Nizu. And finally, Izuku Midoriya and Toru Hagakure versus me. All Might landed in front of both groups, standing to his full height, and towering over them all. Young Midoriya and young Hagakure will be fighting me. They then dispersed to their respective exam areas. As Izuku and Hagakure were walking, she spoke up. Hagakure. I'm sorry. Back when we found put about you and Ryukyu, I was out of line. Midoriya. At least you know you were wrong. I'll tell you the same thing I told Ashido, you'll have to earn my trust back. She gave him a thumbs up as they walked into the fake city. Midoriya. I'll see what I can do. We can hope I get some equipped cards so you can fight. Hagakure. Or you could try to get one of those cards that make you fast, and you could zoom out while I distract. Izuku drew a card as he saw a wave of air pressure coming towards them. Izuku. I summoned Dark Blade, cut the air wave. The humanoid monster with spiked armor sprung from the card, dual swords in hand. He raised his hands and swung down on the wave, splitting it. Izuku drew another card, 3 of diamonds. He held on to it, waiting for All Might to make his appearance, which didn't take long. He landed behind Dark Blade and prepared to attack again, but Izuku threw the card and grabbed Hagakure. Izuku. Dark Blade, attack All Might. As the card let out its shining distraction, Izuku ran off into the city with Hagakure. They had made it halfway when Izuku felt Dark Blade be defeated. He stopped just before running put into a street, and drew another card, 6 of clubs, and handed it to Hagakure. Izuku. It should make you stronger if you hold it. I want you to take off your gloves and boots so when All Might finds us, you'll be able to ambush him. She took the card, and immediately felt her muscles power up. She took off her suit as Izuku ran out of the alley. All Might soon showed up, and started talking to Izuku. Young Midoriya. You run off from your teammate, huh? Or is she running to the exit while you distra? He was flung into a nearby building by an invisible force, otherwise known as Hagakure. She and Izuku took off towards the exit. Unfortunately, All Might recovered and landed in front of them just before they crossed. Trickery like that won't work a second time. Izuku. Then how about this? All Might threw a punch towards Izuku, but instead of dodging or blocking, he took it. All Might then felt a massive force push him back. Izuku. How's mirror force taste? The two students walked through the exit and passed the final exams. Getting to camp. The class was standing outside the UA building, waiting by the bus that would take them to their summer training camp. Izuku was talking to Yaoyorozu and her best friend in the class, Jairu. Just a few days before, the whole class, minus Bakugo, had gone shopping as a class in the nearby mall. What they didn't expect was for Izuku to be taken hostage by Shigaraki. Though he wasn't harmed, he wasn't even afraid for his own life. He was scared that Shigaraki would get bored of him and start killing civilians. His worries were eased, however, by his friends and ample cuddle time with Ryukyu. Before the class got on their bus, they heard an obnoxious voice, one none of them ever wanted to hear. Monoma. So I heard one of you got held captive in a mall, how we? He was quickly knocked out by Kendo, once again. Kendo. Sorry about him, again. Hope we can all get along at camp. The classes greeted each other and boarded their respective buses. During the ride, Izuku was able to sleep until they got there. Once the bus stopped, they got off, but not at a rest stop, on the side of the road, next to a cliff. A black car then drove up to them, and out came two women, one wearing a red, cat-like outfit, the other wearing a blue one. There was also a child. Izuku instantly recognized them as Mandalay and Pixie Bob of the Wild Wild Hussycats, which they promptly introduced themselves as. Mandalay. Your summer camp will take place here, on our land. See that building? All the way over there. That's the camp. She pointed off in the distance, beyond the cliff. Izuku had also started fanbang over them, but just as he was about to go into a timeline of their work, Pixie Bob lunged at him, holding his face with her paw glove. PB. I'm 18 at heart. Izuku muffled. Yes, ma'am. The sound of flapping wings could be heard, as a large being landed behind the bus, and transformed to human. They then spoke, and walked out from the bus. Ryukyu. And I will be helping train you all. And there are some of you who might think I'll go easy on you for personal reasons, but you're wrong. Though I may participate in some of the more fun activities planned for you. Izuku muffled. Oh, Ryukyu, you think you could get her off? She looked at Izuku, seeing him trying to pry the blue hussycat off of his face. Ryukyu giggled a little, walked over, and pulled her off. Ryukyu. Sure thing, Izuku. Not really trying to hide us now, are you? Izuku. I figured you'd be insulted if I wanted to hide us. They both chuckled and looked to the hussycats, waiting for them to go on. As they did, Pixie Bob walked over to the middle of the road, and placed her hand on the ground. Izuku, realizing what was happening, drew from his playing cards a 5 of hearts, not bad. Izuku. Ms. Pixie Bob, can we please ride the bus to camp? PB. Why would I let you do that? Eraser, are you erasing Midoriya's quirk? Izuku looked over to his teacher, to see his hair up, capture tool floating, and his eyes red, looking at him. Izuku. Oh, come on! Suddenly, Pixie Bob used her quirk to fling the class down into the forest below. Before the heroes drove away, Ryukyu called down to Izuku. Ryukyu yelling. I wasn't kidding, Izuku, I'm not going to hold back for you, love you. Izuku yelling. Yeah, I figured love you too, Ryu. The class stood up, and started walking towards the camp. A giant dirt monster suddenly appeared and Izuku went for his power deck, but just pulled out a sticky note. Ryukyu. I knew you would try to use monsters and spells, so I took these for safekeeping. You'll get them back at the camp. Good luck. Ryu Redheart. Izuku. Oh come on! He was knocked back into a tree by the beast. He stood up, drawing from his playing cards, getting an ace of clubs, what he considered his best playing card. He felt his muscles flood with power. Izuku yelling. All right, ace of clubs, just stick behind me, I'll clear a path straight to the camp and we'll beat the Hussycats time. He got into a running position and rocketed off. The ground cracked where he stepped, trees were torn out of the ground as he snagged them, and the dirt monsters were turned to dust. With Izuku's temporary strength, and the multiple students with quirks that helped in mobility, the class made it to camp in an hour. When they made it, with not a scratch on them, the heroes looked amazed, as Izuku looked smug. Izuku, you forgot about my ace of clubs, Ryu. She laughed, walked over, and gave him his power deck back. Ryuko, I guess I did, Izu. No hard feelings, right? Izuku gave her a quick kiss. Izuku, considering it, let me experience the 10 of clubs again. All I have for you are the softest feelings. Aizawa, alright. Enough flirting, some of us are actually single, you know. Izuku, okay. Just one question. Mandalay, what is it? Izuku, who's the kid? Attempted perverted manslaughter. Izuku, who's the kid? Mandalay looked over to the small boy standing away from both groups. Mandalay, Koda? He's my cousin's kid. He's here because of personal reasons. Koda, why don't you say hi? You'll be seeing them for a couple weeks. Izuku walked over to the boy and bent down to match him height. Izuku, hey Koda, I'm Izuku Midoriya. He reached out for a handshake, but instead of taking it, the small boy punched Izuku in the balls. As he started to fall, Ryuko caught him. Ida, you bastard child, don't you know a blow to a man's scrotum is unforgivable? Izuku strained. Why? Ryuko, you'll be okay, Izu. Koda, as if I'd want to hang with some wannabe heroes. Koda walked inside, clearly done with the class antics for the day. Mandalay, I'm sorry about him, just don't take it personally. PB, now let's head inside to eat, and then we can set out some fun activities in our forest. Since you got here early, you can all relax in the hot springs afterwards. The Hussycats led the class inside, where they enjoyed a feast for lunch. Izuku sat next to Yayorozu and Ryuko joined him. Izuku, you're eating with us, Ryuko? Ryuko, as if I would let all this food sit here and not join in, Izu. Besides, I want to spend as much relaxing time with you as I can before I need to go all out for your guys' training. Izuku smiled, got an idea, stabbed a piece of meat with his fork, and pointed it at her mouth. Izuku, open up. She smiled and let him feed her the piece, which she could swear tasted better coming from him. She stabbed another piece and did the same. After a couple more times, they felt eyes on them, and when they looked, Pixie Bob was glaring at them while also sulking. Ragdoll walked over them. Ragdoll, whispering, forgive Pixie Bob, she's been dead set on getting a partner and I think you two are getting on her nerves. Izuku, oh sorry. We didn't know. Ragdoll just nodded and walked off. The couple now more aware of their actions, and slightly embarrassed after being called out. After lunch the class was allowed to have fun outside. The WWPs had put up volleyball, tennis, and badminton nets for them. Izuku and Ryuko were practically unstoppable in badminton, but when they tried the other two, they were cut back down to size. That was until Izuku filled an entire side of the volleyball court with monsters. A few hours later they ate dinner, were all relaxing in the hot springs. Mineta swam over to Izuku at some point and started talking. Mineta, hey Midoriya. I'm pretty sure Ryukyu's on the other side of the wall. Izuku, so? Mineta, so? She's your girlfriend, don't you want to see her naked? Ryuko knew of Mineta's perverted antics from Izuku on multiple occasions, so she was busy focusing her hearing on the boy's side of the springs. She started listening more intently, now interested in Izuku's response. Izuku, I mean, yeah, of course I do. But I won't disrespect her privacy, it's her choice to show me that kinda stuff. Mineta, Fair enough. Mumbles. More for me. After a few more minutes, Izuku noticed Mineta standing by the wall, calculating the height in his head, and before anyone could say anything, he started climbing using his hair. Izuku couldn't catch up to him, and Ciro, the only one who could and would care, had already gone to bed. He was almost to the top when Kota appeared to knock him down, but Mineta just dodged him. Izuku reached over to his playing cards that he brought with him just in case, and drew a 3 of clubs, enough to break the wall and catch the purple-haired bastard. Izuku yelling, "Ryu, cover the girls!" He leapt into the bamboo wall separating the genders and caught Mineta by the leg. Mineta, panicking, threw 2 balls onto Izuku's chest. Izuku then threw the pervert back to the other side, but kept falling. He turned in the air because of the throw, watching as the water drew closer. He hit the water and hit the bottom, the balls on his chest sticking to the bottom. Izuku, this is how I die, isn't it? Stuck to the bottom of the girl's hot spring, there's probably worse ways to go. He started to panic as the realization set in. He started thrashing and flailing to get himself unstuck, the boost from the card having ran out when he landed. Ryuko uncovered herself and the girls when she heard the splashing. She saw Izuku, panicked, in the water. Ashido. Isn't that one of Mineta's hair things on Midoriya's chest? Yaoyorozu. It is, he's stuck there. Ryuko ran over to him and started pounding on the concrete around where he was stuck. It took almost a full minute, but she was able to detach him from the floor, granted some of the floor came with him. She broke the piece by his face to let him breathe easier. Izuku had blacked out due to lack of oxygen, but when he came to, he was on his back being carried by Ryuko. Izuku weakly. Ryu? Ryuko. Izu, you're okay, thank God, does anything hurt? Izuku. Other than how heavy my chest feels, I'll be fine. Ryuko. Well, you won't be able to train until Mineta's ball things unstick. Izuku. Where are we going? Ryuko. To your room, of course. The hussy cat said you weren't going to die, so you're good to go. Izuku. Can you stay with me tonight? Ryuko. Sure, Izu. It was around 10 at night. Izuku and Ryuko were in bed, though they were having trouble sleeping, one due to the 3 centimeters concrete slab on his chest, the other due to something she heard. Ryuko. Hey, Izu? Izuku. Yes, Ryu? Ryuko. I heard what you said to Mineta back in the hot springs. And I know you'd never betray my privacy like that, but hearing you say it just felt really nice. Izuku. Oh, really? I'm glad something positive came out of this. Ryuko. That being said, I wouldn't exactly mind you maybe accidentally walking into our room while I'm changing back at the apartment. Izuku went red. Izuku. I'll keep that in mind. Good night, Ryu, I love you. Ryuko. I love you too. Good night, Izu. Christmas special. Waking up in a familiar room, Izuku looked down to see Ryuko, his unofficial dorm room roommate, lightly snoring. He looked outside to see snow gently falling down. He nudged her awake, a small growl escaping her lips as she opened her eyes. He chuckled and gave her a soft kiss. They both got up and went downstairs, excited to celebrate Christmas together. No one was there when they got to the common room, but a note was left by Aizawa. Aizawa, Midoriya, Ryukyu, you two have slept in, everyone's already gone, but 2 gifts were left for you, Merry Christmas you two. They chuckled at Aizawa's usually nice note, and Izuku made some breakfast for the 2 of them. After they were done eating, they walked over to the tree and saw the 2 gifts, both with Ciro's tape on them. They pulled them in and Izuku got Ashido's set of CDs she bought while Ryuko got a yellow sleeping bag, identical to Aizawa's. Once that was over, they headed to the Midoriya apartment. Ryuko knocked and the door was immediately opened by an ecstatic Inko and a relatively calm Hisashi. They all went into the living room to talk and hand out presents. Inko was given a WWP-themed handbag and Hisashi got an Endeavor jacket. Both were presents of their favorite heroes. Izuku's present was a brand new pack of dual monster cards. Ryuko was given a nice pair of boots. Inko made dinner for them all and they sat around the table, eating, talking, and laughing. They talked for a while afterwards, but Izuku and Ryuko had to leave. They hugged goodbye and Ryuko flew her and Izuku back to their apartment. They walked inside and sat down on the couch, watching Christmas movies that were playing on TV. Izuku particularly liked the pre-Quirk era movie trilogy of the Santa Claus, which featured Tim Allen as the main character. Ryukyu liked those too, but she really liked The Grinch with Jim Carrey. Eventually they both fell asleep on the couch curled up next to each other, smiling with the last of their Christmas being spent together. Camp Assault. The two classes were standing by the forest after their third day of training. They were going to do a test of courage the Hussycats came up with as a little activity for them. They were to be split into pairs and walk in a loop as the other class tried to scare them. To make the pairs they were to draw lots. Izuku. I'm the only one without a partner. Pixie Bob. And the first to go will be Team Midoriya. Izuku. Great. He then heard someone walk up to him. Ryukyu. I'll go with you. Besides, if I do then I get to use my Dragon Dorm on 1B. Izuku smiled and hugged her. They started walking into the forest. After a few minutes they had reached Ragdoll at the halfway point. Tokage and Yanagi were the only ones to actually scare them at that point. Ragdoll. Hey guys, take a tag and move on. Izuku. Right. He grabbed the tag from the Hussycats booth and they continued on. A couple more minutes passed and Izuku started to see something. Ryukyu also seemed to smell something. Both. Smoke. Izuku looked to the side to see a long piece of metal coming towards them. He pushed Ryukyu away and dived to the side, still getting a large slash through his arm. They then heard a voice from above. Moonfish. Flesh, let me carve you up. It's been too long since I last had a good meal. Ryukyu. Go Izuku, I'll handle him. Izuku. No, these blades would go between your scales. Ryukyu. Fine. But we need backup. Izuku nodded and reached into his hero deck, drawing a card. Izuku yelling. I summon 13. In a flash of light the rescue hero appeared in her hero costume. She looked around, noticing Izuku, Ryukyu, and Moonfish, quickly analyzing the situation. She turned towards Moonfish, pointed at him, and opened her finger cap. Moonfish eventually passed out from pain. 13 walked over to Izuku and Ryukyu. 13. The camp's been attacked? Ryukyu. Yes. Follow the path to reach the other heroes. Me and Izuku will stay here and help other students on the trail. Mandalay. Everyone under permission from the Pro-Hero Eraserhead, both classes A and B are allowed to use their quirks in training to defend themselves. Also the villains are targeting a student named Bakugo. Izuku. Kaken? 13. I'll get going. Good luck you two. They nodded and headed back towards Ragdoll. When they got there they noticed a blonde girl on top of the hero. Izuku drew from his playing cards a 4 of diamonds. He ran forward and threw the card, the light distracting the girl long enough for Ryukyu to tackle her and pin her. Ragdoll. Thanks, she's a lot stronger than she looks. Ryukyu. So am I. Toga looked around and noticed the gash on Izuku's arm he was trying to cover with his jacket. Toga. Oh. You're a cutie, that cut there is adorable. Can I cut you more? You'll be much cuter for me. Ryukyu growled at the girls, rather odd advances. Ryukyu. He's mine. Toga shrugged. Toga. Can't get them all. Izuku. We need to keep her restrained, but there's more of my classmates out here than we thought if they haven't found Kaken yet. Ragdoll. No, they're doing okay I think. There was some gas earlier but it's gone now. Another villain's been taken care of. Izuku nodded and drew a card from his power deck. Izuku. Come out Blizzard Dragon. A light blue dragon appeared from the card. Izuku. Go help any students you can find. Defeat villains but don't kill. The dragon took off towards the forest. Izuku. We should stay. This is the only other place that they know someone would be at. Ryukyu. Yeah. She punched Toga's head, knocking her out. Ryukyu. Didn't want to listen to her anymore. After a few minutes Bakugo, Todoroki, Tsu, and Uraraka walked up to them from the group. Izuku. At least they didn't get him. They remained there for an hour until they heard another message from Mandalay. Mandalay. Backup will be here shortly, the villains have left. Midoriya, thank you for getting 13 here and for the dragon, they helped a lot. The group walked towards the area they started at. Pixie Bob was sat against a tree with an ice pack on her head. Yaoyorozu was unconscious and fused to a ways, others were unconscious, but a few were unharmed. Izuku seemed to be the most injured. Aizawa walked over to them and took Toga from them. Aizawa. Ambulances are on the way, we'll get you on the first one, Midoriya. Good job. Izuku. Thank you, Mr. Aizawa, but I'll be fine, I heard there was gas, the one affected should be first. The man nodded and walked away. Izuku and Ryuko turned to look at the injured and incapacitated students. Ryuko. How did this happen? No one knew where this was. Izuku. There's only one answer. There's a traitor in UA, more than likely one of my fellow students. Ryuko. You're right, Aizu. But who? You all have fought together, so who would it be? Izuku. A very good actor. They're either someone who's been against us since the beginning, or they're being manipulated. He grabbed Ryuko's hand and she squeezed his. Ryuko. Either way, I'll be by your side until it's over, and I'll fight with you against the villains. Izuku. Thank you, Ryu. I'm lucky I have you. Ryuko. And I'm lucky to have you. We have a lot of work to do if we're to uncover the traitor. Izuku. Then we'll start as soon as we're all out of the hospital. She leaned her head on his shoulder, both analyzing the students while enjoying each other's company. Dorms. It was a week after the attack and things kept getting worse. Just a few days after, All Might and other heroes had attacked the League's Noma facility, but the League's leader, AFO, showed himself. His power was matched only by All Might as he had many quirks, but All Might was just barely able to beat him, though he had run out of power, which forced the symbol of peace into retirement. Now, both All Might and Aizawa were in Ryuko and Izuku's apartment, sitting in front of them. Then, Inko and Hisashi walked in and sat down next to the couple. Aizawa. We're here to discuss a new policy UA is adopting. Hisashi. Which is? AM. A dorm system. UA is to become a boarding school, but we need permission from the parents to house the students. Inko. And if we say no? AM. Sadly, young Midoriya will have to find another hero school. Hisashi and Inko leaned towards each other and started whispering. Then they leaned back and Inko spoke up. Inko. Fine, he can go. Aizawa. Really? You're the easiest so far. Inko. As long as he has his hero deck with him, he'll be fine. We worked with him to ensure it was filled with only the best heroes. AM. Well, we should be going then. Aizawa. Pack up by Monday cause you move in on Tuesday. Izuku looked at Ryuko with a small frown. Aizawa. She can come too in the 1A dorms. I don't know why, but Nisa has a soft spot for your relationship for some reason. Izuku's face lit up as he hugged Ryuko. Izuku. We can be together. She chuckled and ruffled his hair before hugging him back. Ryuko. Yes, we can, Izuku. The two men left as the other four talked and caught up with each other. On Tuesday, Izuku and Ryuko walked through the UA gates. A moving truck had picked up their boxes from the apartment the day before. Izuku spied a new path with a sign that said, Dormitories, pointing down it. As he led her down it, she spoke up. Ryuko. Hey, Aizu. Izuku. HM? Yeah, Ryu? Ryuko. I noticed you've stopped using this Pokemon things in your deck. Why is that? Izuku. Oh, that. Yeah, they're strong, but I've got to look up what moves they're able to use. They aren't worth the hassle when the Yu-Gi-Oh cards don't have specific moves they're bound to. Ryuko nodded. Ryuko. I see. You excited for dorm life? Izuku. Kind of. On one hand, I get to be closer with my friends, on the other hand, Kaken is also here. Before they reached the end of the path, Ryuko stopped him and hugged him. Ryuko. You are stronger than him, I wholeheartedly believe that. So if he ever gives you trouble, as Yusujiyama would say, put him on his ass. Izuku put a small laugh as he hugged her back. They shared a quick kiss as they walked the rest of the way, hand in hand. They eventually found Aizawa and the rest of 1A and joined the group. Aizawa. Ah, Midoriya, Ryukyu, glad you two could join us. The class all turned to face the newcomers, smiles growing once they noticed them holding hands. Aizawa got their attention back and led them inside. He then started describing the dorms. Aizawa. This building is 5 stories tall with 8 rooms on each floor above the first. Boys are on the left and girls on the right. This first floor consists of the common space for you all to hang out or whatever, a kitchen, which you will be tasked with stocking yourselves after the first week here, and the showers, which are separated by gender manetta, so don't even try. The purple ball-haired boy looked down in sadness. Aizawa. Moving on, floors 2 and 3 will house 4 boys, 4 and 5 house 3. There will be 2 girls per floor except for floor 2, which will only house Ryukyu. Any questions? Zero raised his hand and Aizawa called on him. Zero. Yeah, so why is Ryukyu moving in with us? Aizawa shrugged. Aizawa. Ask Nizu, he never tells me anything. He then pressed a button and a hologram showing the rooms and their occupants appeared. Aizawa. Find your name and go to your room. Unpack, decorate to your liking, then come down, or stay up there, it's your choice. Just don't destroy the building. With that he walked into his own room, and presumably immediately fell asleep. The students went to the elevators and stairs, and went to their rooms to move in. A few hours later, Izuku had finished and went over to Ryuko's room and knocked on the door. When she answered, he walked inside. They sat at a small table she set up. Ryuko. To what do I owe this visit? Izuku. Serious business. Ryuko straightened up and got a little concerned. Ryuko. About the traitor? Izuku nodded. Izuku. So far I haven't seen any suspicious behavior. They're either really good, or no orders have come in to act on yet. Ryuko. It's the first day here, the villains are likely laying as low as possible. Besides, with AFO in jail, I doubt they even have the means to contact the traitor. Izuku. You're probably right, Ryu. We should calm down about this and wait a month or so. She nodded, smiled, and placed a hand on his. Ryuko. For now, I think I just want to spend time with you, Aizu. He smiled and nodded, flipping over his hand to grip hers. Izuku. Me too. New moves. Izuku and the rest of the class were currently all within Gym Gamma, or the Total Dining Land. Aizawa had told them that they were there to make ultimate moves and improve their quirks, which was what the training camp was supposed to do, but it was attacked. Everyone else was standing on concrete platforms, either fighting ectoplasm clones or thinking about moves, but Izuku was in a corner, surrounded by plastic, cardboard, and cards. Izuku. Come on. Please. As he opened yet another box of cards, he didn't find what he was looking for. Izuku. No? Ugh, just how rare are these things? He heard a door near him open and the sound of something being rolled in. He turned to his left to see Ryuko wheeling in a cart with more boxes stacked on top of each other. Ryuko. Find what you're looking for yet, Izuku? Izuku shook his head. Izuku. No. Out of all these boxes, just how rare could they be? Ryuko. Izuku, these are getting expensive. If you could tell me what specific cards you're looking for, I could buy them. Izuku. I'm looking for the ultimate cards, let's see. 3, 5. 8 cards in total, all of which add up to 4 monsters. Ryuko. 8 cards but only 4 monsters? That doesn't make sense. Izuku. Well, 5 of them are used to summon 1 monster. He has infinite attack and defense points. Ryuko. Okay. Well, Izuku, what are they? Izuku. First are the 3 Egyptian god cards. Obelisk the Tormentor, the Winged Dragon of Ra, and Slifer the Sky Dragon. Ryuko nodded and started writing down the names in a notebook she had, a small habit she picked up from Izuku. Ryuko. And the last one? Izuku. Exodia the Forbidden One. Split into 5 cards to make the game fair. Each card represents 1 body part. If I can get my hands on any of these, no villain would stand a chance, given that I draw them. Ryuko walked over and helped him up before giving him a quick kiss. Ryuko. Just remember to take a break, okay? Now clean up here, throw out the packaging and pick up the cards. Whisper. I'm going to your dorm, meet me there for a surprise. Izuku quickly nodded and got to work as she walked away. Some of the others looked at him confused as he rushed to pick up his mess. It took a few minutes, but his corner was now spotless, and then he snuck out the back so Aizawa wouldn't see him before running to the dorms. He soon reached his door and opened it slowly, revealing a dark room. He looked towards the window to see the figure of Ryuko standing by the window, yellow eyes glowing in the dark like a predator in a cartoon. Izuku. You, are Ryuko? What's up? She suddenly lunged forward and dragged him inside, closing the door behind him. She dragged him towards the bed but stopped before it, pulling him into a deep kiss. She then shoved him onto the bed and crawled on with him. Izuku. Ryuko? Why, you're scaring me here. What are you doing? Almost as if his voice brought her back to reality for a minute, she spoke. Ryuko. Oh, Izu. You see, since my quirk is animalistic, I have animal instincts. As a part of that, comes a mating cycle. Twice a year I have to deal with this, once in the end of winter, and again in the middle of summer. Surely you can do the math. Izuku nodded. Ryuko. I apologize, but now that I have you, I thought you could help. Answer quick before I can't stop myself. Izuku. Why, yes, I'll help. Anything for you, Ryuko. And I'd be lying if I said I'd never thought about this. She let out a small chuckle, a hint or draconic growling mixed in. She leaned down and put her mouth to his ear. Ryuko. Get ready. Neither of us are going to be walking for a while after this, Izu. It had just turned to 3 in the afternoon. Let's just say, no one in the dorms could really focus or sleep until midnight. The next day, everyone awoke and went about their training now with extra trauma, less sleep, and one less classmate for the day. Date night. It was only a few days before the licensing exam, and Izuku and Ryuko were sitting in her room, bored out of their minds. They had already tried to see what the others were doing, but it was either baking or playing against Bakugo in a fighting game. They didn't want to do either. Then Izuku thought of an idea and sat up from his place on the floor. Izuku. Hey, Ryuko? She didn't sit up but rolled over on her bed to face him. Ryuko. Yes, Izuku? Izuku. We should go on a date. We haven't gone on one yet. Now Ryuko sat up. Ryuko. As much as I'd love to, I don't think it's a good idea. Izuku looked at her confused. Izuku. Why? We don't have to go anywhere. Now it was her turn to be confused. Ryuko. What? But then what would we do? Izuku. Simple, we call the best chef we know, Kaken, and have him bring it up. Ryuko looked at him like he was dumb. Izuku. What? Ryuko. How do you know he won't just say no or poison it? Izuku smiled. Izuku. The only thing he's passionate about other than being a hero is cooking. He takes food too seriously to say no. Ryuko. Okay. Well, I haven't been the one to stock the kitchen, so I don't know what we have. Izuku. Then I'll have him surprise us. Izuku pulled out his phone and called Bakugo. Bakugo. What do you want, nerd? I'm busy kicking the electric dumbass ass in Smash. Izuku. Me and Ryuko wanted to have a date night. Bakugo. Why are you calling me? Izuku. Because we can't go out, and you're the best chef in the dorms. He heard Bakugo laugh. Bakugo. Damn right, what do you two want? Izuku. Surprise us. Though nothing too spicy for me. Bakugo. Alright. I'll be up in 40 minutes. Bakugo hung up and Izuku put his phone away. Izuku. 40 minutes, he said. Ryuko got off her bed and sat next to him. Ryuko. So we just wait? Izuku nodded. She moved closer. 40 minutes later, Bakugo knocked on the door of Ryuko's room. He heard shuffling from the other side, frantic like they weren't expecting it. Suddenly the door was opened by Izuku. Bakugo. Here, nerd. You and the lizard better enjoy this. He noticed the green-haired boy's even messier hair, and the slight red tint around his mouth. He smirked and handed off the 2 plates he brought up. Izuku. Thank you, Kaken. The blonde boy just grunted and walked away. Izuku closed the door with his foot and walked over to the table, setting the plates down. Ryuko. Didn't expect to take that long. Sorry, Izuku. Izuku. It's fine. Let's just enjoy the food. She nodded and got in front of a plate. She removed the cover to reveal a steak. Izuku sat down and removed the one on his, revealing another steak. Izuku. Looks good. I'll have to thank him again. Ryuko nodded and started to eat hers. Izuku did the same and started eating. They finished eating and put the plates aside to be taken back down later. Now they were laying on the bed together. Izuku was holding her close. Ryuko. I can't wait for you to graduate. Is that selfish? To want your school years, the years where everything is easy and fun, to be over? Izuku shook his head and held her tighter. Izuku. Not at all. I know there are those out there who fantasize about you. I can't wait to graduate so I can let them know you're off limits. She chuckled. Ryuko. I'll gladly be there when you do. I like this little date. We're definitely going on an actual date when you graduate. Izuku smiled. Izuku. Definitely. The rest of the night was spent together. The next step of Izuku's hero training was just a few days away. Provisional Licensing Exam PT1. Izuku and the rest of the class were standing in a large gymnasium-like room, with many other classes around them. Everyone was in their hero suits, ready for whatever the exam threw at them. They were all facing a platform with a microphone stand. Then a man, his eyes rivaling the tiredness of Aizawa, walked up and over to the microphone. Mera. Yon hello everyone, I am Yakumura Mera, and the official proctor for the Professional Licensing Yon exam. God, I can't wait to sleep later. As you all know, with the recent retirement of All Might, crime rates have skyrocketed. Which is also why only 100 of you all will ultimately pass, as we can't just let yon random students become heroes, only the best of the best. As the crowd listened to the tired man, they looked around, noting that 100 was a small fraction of the amount of students there were. Mera. Now yon on to the first portion of this exam. You will each be given 3 magnetic targets and 6 activator balls. To pass, you must eliminate 2 other participants, either by hitting all 3 of their targets yourself, or being yon the one to hit their final target. If all 3 of your targets are hit, you fail the exam. The targets and balls yon will now be passed out. Izuku looked around and noticed people in black suits making their rounds to the students with boxes in their hands. Mera. There are a few rules. No seriously injuring another participant. The targets must be in visible and appropriate areas, so no armpits or groin, and you are to not cause significant damage to the environments you are fighting in. Good luck. As Izuku put on his targets and stored his balls, the room started to open up, revealing they were in the center of a ginormous stadium with many different environments. Izuku and 1A all started running towards a rocky area, minus Bakugo, Kaminari, Kirishima, and Todoroki, who all went a different direction. Izuku. We should all stay together, well, those of us remaining. Ashido. And why is that? Izuku. Because they already know our quirks. Siro. Right, from the sports festival, and since we all already work good together, we should stick as close as possible. Izuku nodded. Suddenly a large section of the rock in front of them shook and broke, the vibration headed straight for them. Jiru yelling, heartbeat distortion. She plugged her jacks into her hand amps and put both fists to the ground, countering the shockwave with her own. Then they looked up, seeing a face from when they arrived, Shindo. Shindo. So you have some new tricks, doesn't matter, get them. Before anything could happen, Izuku drew 3 cards. Izuku yelling magical hats. Suddenly all of 1A minus Izuku became covered by large top hats, plus 2 extra. Izuku. You better choose wisely. Shindo simple. Izuku smiled and shook his head as the hats started moving at impossible speeds, shuffling themselves around. Izuku. One wrong choice and one of my monsters becomes unleashed. Now the enemy school became cautious. Sure, it was most likely that they would hit a 1A member. The risk of a monster might not be that worth it. Shindo. You're bluffing. With that he threw one of his balls at a hat, which disappeared to show Ashido, who then melted the ball with her acid, Shindo. See? He was bluffing. Shindo's class then started throwing their balls at the hats, unveiling most of 1A, but then one of the extra hats was destroyed, revealing a monster. Izuku yelling, "Flame swordsman, incapacitate the enemy!" The monster ran forward, using the flat of his blade as a club to knock out some of the students, his flames being hot enough to make others pass out. However, Shindo was able to escape. After a minute, Izuku and most of 1A walked over and tagged the students, though there wasn't enough for the group. Ida. It's a shame. Go on guys, we'll find what we need. Izuku, Ashido, Aoyama, Sato, Koda, and a few others nodded as they walked away, being T1s to get their required eliminations. The first portion was nearly complete, and the second was still to come. Provisional Licensing Exam PT2. Izuku entered the waiting room and a woman in a suit walked over to him. He also noticed she was carrying what looked like a magnet. I'm going to take your targets off now, okay? Izuku. Oh, sure. Go ahead. She touched the faceplates of the targets with the magnets, and they fell off. She expertly caught them as they fell and put them in her pocket. Good luck on the rest. Izuku smiled. Izuku. Thanks. She walked away to put the targets back and he walked over to a table he noticed had food on it. He picked up a wrap sandwich and began to eat it while waiting on the others. Explosions could be heard from outside the large hall, but Mera, once again on stage, paid them no mind. He began to speak once more. Mera. As you may have figured out, this exam will not be purely combat. Instead, the second portion will be focused on rescue. This portion is run on a demerit system, meaning you can only lose Yon points, not gain them. Now keep in mind that these are professionals, so they know exactly what to look for. Each of you start with 100 points, go below 50 and you fail. Now. The walls of the room unfold just like they had for the first portion, revealing the areas the students had just fought and were destroyed. Mera. Go. As he finished talking, all the students who had passed the first portion of the exam ran out to the different areas. Izuku went towards the city and started searching. After a few minutes he heard some cries which he followed. He then found what was clearly a middle-aged man in children's clothes. He also noticed some fake blood on his forehead. Izuku. Oh man. Hey bud, let's get that cut all fixed up, okay? He pulled out a roll of bandages and wrapped up the wound. Izuku. There. Do you know if anyone else was nearby? Child. My grandpa was right behind me. Izuku hummed and thought before drawing 2 cards. Izuku. Come on out, Kuribo, Clayman. The 2 monsters appeared on either side of Izuku. Izuku. Clayman, search the nearby rubble carefully to find this boy's grandpa. Clayman then walked past Izuku and the kid and started gently moving the rubble. Izuku then picked up the actor. Izuku. Kuribo, get up here. The small fur ball of a monster jumped up and landed on Izuku's shoulder, next to the fake kid. Izuku then started speed walking to the evacuation point. He also noticed that the actor was taking his role so seriously that he was trying to play with Kuribo. After a couple minutes he had reached the point and handed the civilian to another student. Izuku. Kuribo, go with him. Just as the creature jumped down, a loud blast was heard and a large cloud of dust could be seen not far from the evacuation point. Izuku ran over to see what was happening, only to see Gang Orca and a gang of henchmen with wrist launchers. Gang Orca, yelling, "Hello heroes, let's see how well you can fight and rescue, shall we?" He then started taking down students like they were nothing. Izuku noticed Kirishima and got an idea. He had stacked the decks himself so he knew what was next. Izuku drew from both his power and playing cards decks, drawing Mirror Force and a 4 of clubs respectively. Izuku Kirishima. His red-haired classmate looked at him and ran over. Kirishima. What is it? Izuku held out the cards to him. Izuku. Take these. With them you'll stand a chance against him. Kirishima flashed a smile as he took them. Kirishima, thanks bro. Izuku nodded as Kirishima ran off, though he knew Kirishima wouldn't win the fight. Izuku then ran towards an elevated area, noticing Kirishima make Gang Orca stagger with mirror force, though he did unfortunately fall soon after to Gang Orca's sonic attack. This, however, was part of Izuku's plan. Once Kirishima was on the ground, Izuku pulled from a fourth container on his belt, this one only containing 3 cards. Once he drew, he held the card high up in the air. Izuku, yelling, kingly summoning. A very large monster began to form from the card in his hand. It towered over the already giant Gang Orca. Its blue, rock-hard, armor-like skin began to become clear to the others, its exposed teeth and red eyes making many fear the power its mere presence alluded to. Izuku yelling, "Obelisk the Tormentor incapacitate Gang Orca!" The monster merely had time to look at the fish man before the hero began his assault. He started pounding on its legs, which while it did get pushed back, left it unfazed. It wasn't until Gang Orca hit it with a sonic attack that it reacted and retaliated. Once the attack hit, it seemed stunned for just a second before reclaiming its bearings, winding its fist back, and pounding Gang Orca into the ground with one punch. The hero then attempted to get back up only to be knocked out by a second punch. Now that its task was complete, Obelisk disappeared and Izuku placed the card back into his god deck. Izuku then descended from his high ground and approached the still paralyzed Kirishima, who had evidently been able to see Obelisk from how he fell. "Izuku, are you okay?" Kirishima, "I will be. Did you know I wouldn't beat him?" Izuku, "Yeah, sorry. I needed the distraction for my move." Kirishima, "Don't sweat it, bro. I had fun with the cards and get a front row seat to the coolest thing I've ever seen." He then moved his arm a little, indicating Gang Orca's attack was wearing off. Izuku stuck out his hand, which Kirishima took and helped him up. A voice was then heard over the speakers. "Mera, all civilians have been rescued and taken to the evacuation zone. Yon the villain boss has also been apprehended. The exam is over. Go change into your school uniforms and follow your teacher. Yon." Izuku and Kirishima smiled. It was over and they were sure they both passed. Future preview. The students who participated in the second portion of the exam were standing in a familiar hall, this time wearing their school uniforms rather than their hero suits. Mera once more walked onto the stage to speak. "Mera, yon the exam has concluded and your performances have been looked over." He then pressed a button and a projection appeared behind him. "Mera, behind me, yon is a projection of those of you who passed. Papers with your specific scores are being passed around now." Izuku was then handed his paper from a man in a suit. It read 90 out of 100. Izuku looked further to find that the reason he lost points was his overkill solution to taking out Gang Orca. "Mera, those of you who passed, please follow the signs to get your licenses." With that he walked off stage and allowed the students to go where they needed. Izuku walked out of the exam building last. He had to listen to someone from the Safety Commission lecture him on judging how much power he needed to use. He looked around, only to see the bus had left, then his phone buzzed so he checked it to see a message. "Aizawa, apologies for leaving you. Bakugo was getting too impatient and may have blown up the bus if we hadn't. Call Ryukyu or use one of your monsters." Izuku sighed. "Izuku. Of course Kaken would do that." He began walking down the street and was about to call Ryuko when he accidentally bumped into a man. Izuku. "Oh, sorry. Didn't see you there." Once he got a look at the man, he realized he had just bumped into Sir Night-Eye. They then made eye contact and stayed quiet for a second. Izuku. "Sir? Are you okay?" It was then he noticed the hero's eye had turned purple, signifying the use of his quirk foresight. Now Izuku was confused. Why use his quirk now? It was well known that it was a once daily use. Izuku. "See anything interesting?" Night-Eye. "Only that you and Ryukyu will have your hands full with that traitor search the two of you are conducting." The man then started to walk away, but his arm was grabbed by Izuku. Izuku. "All my life I've been the butt end of everyone's jokes. I've been teased, beaten, and almost everything under the sun. I know when someone is lying. What did you see?" Night-Eye. "It is none of your concern." Izuku. "Well, considering it's my future, it is my concern." Night-Eye. "You cannot change it, so let it be." Izuku. Yes, I can. Night Eye. What makes you so sure? Izuku. My cards. Not all of them are powerful, I'll admit that, but my power grows with every pack I open. I know there are monsters that can overcome your future. In fact, I have one on me now. Night Eye. What is it? Izuku smiled and chuckled. Izuku. Tell me what you saw first. Night Eye sighed. Night Eye. I saw what would happen if you and Ryukyu found the traitor instead of letting Yue handle it. The traitor, scared, runs and the two of you give chase. Once far enough from Yue, the two of you are jumped by the League of Villains and killed. You even pulled a card in advance, prepared for an ambush, but you were never given the opportunity to use it. Now, what is this monster? Izuku. Time Wizard. I'll summon him in advance and have him rewind specifically me and Ryuko so we stay alive and can fight in the ambush. Night Eye. I see. A monster that deals with time may be able to escape my vision. And I wouldn't go around saying her first name like that. Izuku. You're the only one here and you looked into my future so you knew already. Night Eye sighed and walked away. Izuku turned and continued walking, successfully calling Ryuko this time. Ryuko. Hey Izuku, the class just got back. Izuku. Yeah, I need a ride. Also, there's something we have to talk about. Ryuko. What is it? Izuku. I just ran into Sir Night Eye and he looked into my future. All I'm going to say now is that he sees us die, but I have a plan to avoid that. We can talk more once we're both in the dorms. Ryuko. Agreed. I'm on my way. See you in a few minutes, love you. Izuku. Love you too. Bye. With that, the phone conversation ended, and Izuku was finally on his way back to the dorms. Unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to relax at all for the rest of the day. A plan. Izuku arrived at UA after it was already dark out. He walked through the dorm building doors to find a single chair waiting for him. It then spun around to reveal Aizawa sipping on a mug of coffee. Aizawa. Mind explaining why you're so late? If you left when I was told you did, you would have been able to catch a bus that would have taken you 2 blocks from UA. Instead, the route you took went to 3 different cities first. Izuku sighed. Izuku. I bumped into Sir Night Eye. He saw my future and I wanted to know what it was. Aizawa. I see. Let me guess, he refused because you can't change his vision, right? Izuku looked confused. Izuku. How did you know? Aizawa. Because he does that. He may seem all put together and professional, but he values humor above all else. He most likely did it to entertain himself. What was his vision? Izuku paused. He hadn't thought about it much as he was waiting to talk to Ryuko about it, but Aizawa knowing might also help. Izuku. The vision was of me and Ryuko dying to the League. Aizawa leapt to his feet. Aizawa. What? How? Izuku. Me and her chased the UA traitor down and walk into an ambush. Even though we knew it was an ambush, we still die. Aizawa. And how do you know of the traitor Midoriya? You and Ryukyu aren't personally investigating an inside affair at UA, are you? Izuku stayed silent, answering Aizawa's question loud and clear. The tired man sighed. Aizawa. All right, keep it up, we'll keep an eye on you. I promise neither of you will die. Izuku. Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, Night Eye wasn't able to see who the traitor was. Aizawa. That just means it's over 6 months away. From what I know, starting there his visions start to get more and more vague. Now get to bed, we have something important to talk about in class. Izuku. Right. Izuku walked past the teacher and towards the elevator. He got in and pressed the button to his floor. After a few seconds the doors opened once more, and he walked to his room. Once he got inside he noticed Ryuko sitting in Hus's desk chair. As soon as she saw him, she stood up and went to hug him. Ryuko. Izuku, you okay? Izuku hugged her back. Izuku. Yeah, I didn't get hit by anything during the exam. They ended the hug and separated. Ryuko pulled Izuku into the room and then closed the door. Ryuko. Now, about your run-in with Night Eye. Izuku. Can we talk about it tomorrow? Yawn, a 3-hour bus ride after an exam and hearing about your death is pretty tiring. She smiled. Ryuko. Of course. He took off his backpack. Izuku. Could you turn around so I can change? Ryuko. Izuku, we've seen each other fully. Izuku. I know, it's just I don't know. Ryuko chuckled and walked over. Ryuko. It's okay. She placed a kiss on his cheek before stepping back and turning around. A minute later, he spoke up. Izuku. All right. She turned back around to see him in his usual t-shirt and shorts. Izuku. Wanna sleep here tonight? She smiled. Ryuko. Always, Izuku. He smiled. He turned off the light and they both got in bed. Midnight. So you two somehow figure out who it is, and instead of telling anyone else, charge and head first and die? The couple. Izuku. That's about it, yeah? Ryuko. Our theory is that we catch them doing something and they run. Nizu. Which would make it so you cannot find us or risk losing them. Aizawa. Which is why I propose we either have them under constant surveillance, or have them carry trackers wherever they go. Snipe. I agree with having them carry around trackers. Constant surveillance would put both their privacies in jeopardy and would mean one of us would be taken from our respective duties here. Nizu. Who else thinks the trackers are a good idea? The rest of the staff raised their hands. Nizu. Then it's decided. Midoriya, Ryukyu, visit the support course workshop later to pick up the trackers. You're all free to go. With that said, everyone left the room. Izuku followed Aizawa to the 1A classroom and Ryuko left the campus to go patrol. Izuku vs. Bakugo. It was later in the day. Class 1A was all in the common space hanging out with others or sitting alone, either doing homework or reading a book. Soon it was called out that dinner was finished, so they filed over to the tables. Izuku was about to head up to his room after the class had finished eating, when Bakugo put his hand on his shoulder. Izuku. Kaken? Bakugo. After dark. Meet me outside. He let go of Izuku and continued on his way. Confused, Izuku continued up to his room to find Ryuko waiting there for him. Ryuko. Any luck on the trader? Izuku shook his head. Izuku. Still too early to tell, though Kaken seems off. She stood up. Ryuko. Bakugo? How so? Izuku. He stopped me in front of the elevator and told me to meet him out front after dark. Ryuko stepped over and placed her hands on his shoulders. Ryuko. Izuku. You don't need to go. You know that, right? Izuku nodded. Izuku. I know, but I feel like I do. Not for him, but for me. He was the entire reason we met. I need to see this through. She smiled and gave him a kiss. Ryuko. I thought you'd say that. She went over to his desk and picked up his playing cards deck. She then handed it to him. Ryuko. I have a feeling this is all you're gonna need. Izuku smiled. Izuku. Thanks, Ryuko. She gave him another kiss. Ryuko. Teach him a lesson. Izuku. I will. It was finally dark out. Izuku exited the dorm building to find Bakugo standing under the closest light. Izuku walked over to him. Izuku. Where are we doing this? Bakugo. Ground Beta. The place you first beat me. They walked to the training area in silence. It took almost 20 minutes, but they eventually made it to the fake city. It took another 5 to reach the center. Izuku. So what is this, Kaken? Some kind of final battle between the champion and the underdog? Instead of answering, Bakugo used his explosions to launch himself at Izuku. Instead of his usual right hook, he sent a kick at Izuku. Izuku just barely ducked under the kick, just for Bakugo to grab the back of his shirt. He was suddenly lifted off the ground and thrown upwards by multiple explosions. His shirt was obliterated, exposing his scarred torso. Bakugo, yelling. You see, there is no reason to ever look down on me, a weakling like you should know his place. Izuku reached into his deck and drew a card. It was 8 of spades. He was now many times more durable. He landed on the asphalt, and as the dust settled, he stood unharmed in a small crater. Bakugo. Lucky draw. Izuku scoffed. Izuku. It wasn't luck. I know my decks better than anyone else. I knew it would be a spades. He reached into the deck again. Izuku. Just like how these two are gonna be a diamond and a club. He drew 5 of diamonds and 3 of clubs. He threw the diamond into the air and rushed Bakugo using the strength granted by the club. He hit Bakugo in the stomach while he was distracted by the shine of the diamond. Izuku. You always said I was weak. He hit him again. Izuku. All because my quirk relied on objects. One more punch. Izuku. But you didn't stop to realize. He landed a final blow which knocked him away. Izuku yelling. I was weak because I idolized you. Bakugo stood back up. Izuku yelling. I never looked down on you, we both worshipped All Might, but unlike him, you were actually in my life. To me, you were already number one. Bakugo yelling. Don't lie to me. He charged once more. Only the power-up from the 8 of spades was still active, meaning Izuku barely moved. Taking advantage of his, Izuku grabbed Bakugo's arm and flipped him over his shoulder, throwing him into the ground. Izuku. I never lost faith in you, Kaken. Never once my beliefs waver. That was until you left me in that alleyway to bleed out. Even then I knew you would become a great hero. You would just need some extra guidance. The explosive blonde stood up, his nose clearly broken from the impact with the road, and turned to face Izuku. Bakugo. But you looked down on me. I never needed your help. He raised his hand and sent his biggest explosion he could at Izuku, which launched him backwards as the spade card began to run out. He stood up from where he landed, blood pouring from his nose. Izuku. So? We both wanted to be like All Might. Even All Might needed help from time to time back then. The best doesn't become the best all on his own. They slowly walked towards each other. Their scuffle may have been short, but their injuries were great. Bakugo. The best is the best because he doesn't need others. Izuku. All Might only beat the Nomu because us and our classmates helped. The best is the best because he knows his own limits and accepts help when he needs it. Kaken, I'm sorry I offered help when you didn't need it, but true heroes help even when they aren't needed. Izuku held his hand out to Bakugo. Izuku. Kaken. Let me help you become the best. Lean on me and me alone when you become overwhelmed. You're far from the perfect hero, and you never will be, but you will be better if you let others in. Bakugo stopped in front of Izuku. Izuku. Heroes fight and protect. If you do the fighting, I'll protect. We can become our own symbols. The symbols of total victory. Bakugo tipped forward and was caught by Izuku. Izuku. Kaken, you okay? Bakugo, mumbling. Deku. Izuku. Huh? Did you say something? Bakugo. Deku. I'm sorry. Izuku smiled. Izuku. You can apologize once we're not breaking curfew. Let's go. A familiar gray scarf then wrapped around them. Aizawa's capture tool. Aizawa. Not just yet. You two are coming with me. House arrest. To say Aizawa was angry was an understatement. He was furious. He chewed them out the entire time Recovery Girl patched their wounds, not heal, just patch. Letting their injuries heal naturally was one of the punishments he gave them. Other than that, he placed them on house arrest, Izuku for 3 days and Bakugo for 4. During their time in house arrest, their classmates were forbidden from sharing any information with them. On the night of the session day, Izuku walked into his room and closed the door. He then walked over to his desk and sat down before reaching inside, taking out a notebook, and beginning to write. He then heard his door open, so he turned around to see Ryuko enter. Izuku. Hey Ryuko. She smiled and pulled over an extra chair. Ryuko. What are you writing about, Izuku? She looked at the notebook to see it was one of his hero journals. This specific page was about his quirk. Then one phrase caught her eye. Ryuko. Deck manipulation? What brought this up? Izuku. My fight with Kaken. Something happened. Ryuko. What was it? Izuku. It was like, I knew what the next card I pulled was going to be. But at the same time, I didn't. It's kinda hard to explain. Ryuko placed a hand on his shoulder. Ryuko. Try. Izuku. As you know, my decks are never always the same. I never actually know what I'm going to pull unless it's from my god deck, which only has 3 cards. Ryuko nodded. Izuku. It was the same then. I didn't know what card would be next, yet the moment I touched my deck, it was like I could sense what cards were next. Ryuko smiled. Ryuko. Sounds like you're improving. Quirks get stronger over time, especially with training and experience. This is natural considering how much you and your class has gotten this year. Izuku. I guess you're right. Suddenly a thump was heard on the glass door to the balcony. Izuku got up, moved his curtain, opened the door, and crouched down. Izuku. Are you okay, Level Eater? As Izuku asked this, a ladybug with a star on its back the size of his hand flew into the room carrying a large stapled packet. It flew over to the desk and dropped the packet. Ryuko. Izuku? What's one of your monsters doing put of its card? Izuku walked over and gave the large insect a couple pats before it disappeared in a cloud of light. Izuku. I just had it go out and deliver something I needed. Ryuko picked up the packet and looked it over. Ryuko. Izuku, this is what your class learned today. You know you shouldn't have it. Izuku shrugged. Izuku. Then Mr. Aizawa shouldn't have given me house arrest. I'll study it tomorrow. He took it from her and placed it in his desk. Izuku. So anything you want to do that doesn't include hanging out with everyone downstairs? She placed her finger on her lips and thought before smiling. Ryuko. Actually, I do. She stood up, grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him in for a deep kiss. After a few seconds, they separated. Izuku. Wow, the last time you were this aggressive was back during Yo. He noticed a small yet familiar glow in her eyes. Izuku. Ahoo. I see. Ryuko let out a small laugh. Ryuko. What do you say we make Aizawa regret giving us unrestricted access to each other, Izuku smiled. Izuku. Anything for you. They kissed once more and made their way to Izuku's bed. Needless to say, it would not get much sleep that night. The Big Three. Another day had passed and now Izuku was free to rejoin his classmates, leaving an oddly quiet Bakugo to his last day of house arrest, though Aizawa did give him one last punishment. He can only use his playing cards for the rest of the week. Now, Izuku entered the classroom for the first time in 3 days. He took his seat. A few minutes later, Aizawa walked into the room and took his place at the front. Aizawa. All right, now that Midoriya is here, we can address the work studies you've all heard about. But before that, Midoriya. Izuku. Yes, Mr. Aizawa? Aizawa. Next time you decide to use monsters to sneak information, use smaller monsters. That, and please be quieter or I'll be forced to give the WoW class a course on Hex Ed, taught by Mike. Izuku. Why, yes, sir. Aizawa. Good. Now, moving on. Work studies are much like your internships from earlier in the year. With these, however, they aren't mandatory, and as you're officially a part-time sidekick, you get paid for the time you work. They can also help you grow stronger, and I've called a few people to better explain that to you. Come in. The door opened and 3 people walked into the room, all wearing UA uniforms. A tall boy with blonde hair and broad shoulders, Hato, and another boy who walked with a hunch and had purple hair. Aizawa. Welcome the Big Three. The strongest students UA has to offer. The purple-haired boy looked up and seemed to glare directly into their souls. He then whipped around to face the wall and mumbled something. Hato spoke up while patting his shoulder. Hato. Doing be like that, you gotta have the heart of a lion, not a kitten. She turned to the class. Hato. Hi, I'm Nijire Hato and this is our kitten Tamaki Amajiki. She then proceeded to rush around the room asking questions about a few students. She eventually got to Izuku. Hato. Hey Midoriya, been a while, any new cards? What do they do? How strong are they? Aizawa. Togata, reel her in. The blonde boy nodded, walked over, and dragged her back to the front. Togata. Alright, now, let's try this. The future is gonna be. Silence. Togata. Grim men, you guys are bad at this. Hey, Eraser, how about, instead of telling them, they fight me? Is that alright? Aizawa shrugged. Aizawa. Just don't hurt them too bad. Togata. Alright, follow me. With that, the big three in Class 1A left and headed towards Gym Gamma. After they changed, Togata stood in front of 1A, minus Todoroki, who stood off to the side with Hado and Amajiki. Togata. Alright, come at me whenever you're ready. Izuku reached into his power deck and drew. His ranged classmates fires their attacks, and he unleashed the monster he drew. Izuku. Go Firestorm Prominence! The flaming alligator pounced from the card and charged towards the blonde boy, and walked right through him. His classmates' attacks also went through him. His clothes also happened to fall off, stunning the class. Togata. Oh, whoops, holdo! As he bent down, a punch covered in black sparks of lightning to the head sent him back. Zero. There's no timeouts in a real fight. A laugh was heard as the cloud of dust the impact made settled, revealing Togata with pants on and a bruise forming on his cheek. Togata. Nice hit, now it's my turn. He then disappeared into the floor. The class was startled and began to look around, staying on guard. He suddenly reappeared behind Jairu, causing her to scream just before he knocked her out. Izuku drew from his playing cards deck and got a 3 of hearts. Izuku. Togata, stay still. Togata. Okay? WH. Kirishima, Ojiro, and Sato all punched him at the same time. As he flew backwards, Firestorm Prominence hit him with his tail. He then laughed again. Togata. So your Midoriya Hados told me about you. He disappeared again and reappeared beneath Izuku. Togata. Which is why you're the next to go. He punched Izuku in the stomach, which sent the boy back, but didn't knock him out. Togata. Huh! Izuku. I trained with Ryukyu. Compared to her, you punch like a baby. Togata smiled. Togata. A challenge. I like a challenge. Izuku quickly drew another playing card, a 2 of spades, making him sturdier. Togata did his trick once more, only this time, Izuku was able to predict it. He went to catch his opponent's fist, only for it to phase through his hand. Togata went to poke his eye, causing Izuku to flinch and close his eyes. Instead, Togata went through Izuku, wrapped his arms around him, and suplexed him, burying his head in the cement. Togata. Sorry, Midoriya, gotta give your classmates some attention. Izuku awoke on a couch in the common space, his head in Ryuko's lap. Izuku. Ugh, what happened? Ryuko. Apparently Togata suplexed you into the ground. She had started playing with his hair while also picking concrete bits out of it. Ryuku. Smart move. A team is always weaker when their support is taken out. Especially when that support can summon an army of monsters and use magic. She chuckled, which caused Izuku to as well. Izuku. I guess so. Ryuko. I have a question for you. Izuku sat up. Izuku. What is it? Ryuko. I already offered this to Uraraka and Azuri, but do you want to study under me? It'll be a bit more professional than the internships, but other than you, I know your quirk better than anyone. Izuku nodded. Izuku. Of course. Work study. Izuku woke up in his dorm room and proceeded to get ready for the day. He put on his school uniform, grabbed his belt, and hooked his card containers on. He went down to the common space and ate breakfast. Then, just as he was about to walk out the doors, his, Uraraka's, and Tsu's phones all went off. He pulled his phone out to look at the message. Ryuko, you're coming in today. Izuku smiled and turned to his 2 classmates, not paying attention as the rest of the class kept walking. Izuku. I'll tell Mr. Aizawa. Uraraka, thanks Midoriya. As he dialed Aizawa's number, the 2 girls immediately began running to the school to grab their costumes. The call was then answered. Aizawa. What is it? Izuku. Me, Azuri, and Uraraka are getting called in today. Aizawa. Any idea how long you'll be gone? Izuku. None. He heard a sigh from the other end. Aizawa. All right. You three are excused. Be back as soon as you can. Izuku. Will do, Mr. Aizawa. The call ended and Izuku ran to catch up to his classmates. Ryuko was sat in her office. She had called in her work-study students a while ago, and while she knew the trip took a while, Hato was usually there by then. Sighing, she contemplated calling to check on their progress, but that was when her enhanced hearing picked up on something outside, the sound of flapping dragon wings. This confused her as dragon-based quirks were rare and ones that actually let the user turn into a dragon were 1 in a million among them. She turned to her window to see what it was, just to see Izuku standing on the back of his red eyes black dragon. The other 3 were with him on its back. He pulled out his phone and hers began to ring, so she picked it up. Izuku. Sorry about this, there were people around your entrance that wouldn't let us in. Ryuko. Ah yes, them. Don't mind them, they think of me as a monster due to my quirk. They've been doing this on and off for years. Head to the roof, I'll meet you there. Izuku. Alright. I could take care of them if you want. Some of my cards could be mistaken as people with quirks. Ryuko chuckled. Ryuko. Just get to the roof. Izuku. Yes, ma'am. She ended the call and the dragon took her students up to the roof of the building. She quickly joined them. Ryuko. Welcome to Ryukyu Agency Uraraka, Ajri. This is the first time you two are seeing the building, so I'd like to give you two a tour before anything else. Hato, Ryukyu. Ryuko. Yes, Hato? Hato. While you're doing that, can me and Midoriya go patrol? Ryuko. I don't see why not. Stick together though and take Route A. We'll take Route B once the tour is over. Hato. Right, come on, Midoriya. Izuku. Right. She began to fly off as Izuku climbed back onto his dragon's back. The two then flew off in the same direction. Ryuko took the 2 girls inside. Some time later, Izuku and Hato had stopped above an intersection. Hato. Hey, Midoriya? Izuku. Yeah? Hato. Why is your hero named Deku? Izuku. It's an old nickname, or insult if you ask the right person. Though I a bit tired of it. I was thinking of getting it changed to Card Master or maybe just King of Games. Hato. King of Games sounds better. Izuku. I thought the same. Maybe I should change up my costume a little to reflect it. Hato. Hey. Are you good at close quarters at all? Izuku shrugged. Izuku. Not as good as most of my classmates, but that's where my playing cards come into play. Therefore, if I get into a sticky situation. Hato. Cool. When you were doing your internship, the only card I didn't get to see was the heart. What does it do again? Izuku. All the heart suit does is make people more susceptible to doing what I say. If I drew a 1 of hearts and told you to smack yourself, it would be a little more tempting than if I told you to do it without the card. If I drew an 8, you would do it with little thought. Hato. And a 10? Izuku. I assume you would do anything I told you to without question. Suddenly, his dragon veered to the right, avoiding a high-powered stream of water from hitting him. Izuku. What? Hato, an attack. Izuku. In broad daylight? Red Eyes swooped down and pick up that man. The monster did as it was told and flew down to the man, but the criminal attacked again, making the monster dodge his attack and cancel its own. Izuku jumped off of Red Eyes and landed behind the man, the sound causing the criminal to turn around. Izuku. Really? In the middle of the city, in the patrol route of Ryukyu's agency, and in broad daylight? The only way you could have done worse was if you did this in front of the agency. Criminal. So? It's not like that beast could do any tea. He was met by a punch to the gut from Izuku. He retaliated by using his quirk to launch himself upwards. Izuku yelling Red Eyes. The monster hit the man in midair, sending him back to the ground. The man was able to maneuver himself to land safely on his feet, but his fight was already over. As he looked up, he was met by the eye-hurting light of a 6 of diamonds. He then felt the spiraling energy of Hato slam into his back, knocking him down. Red eyes then landed on him. Hato walked over and stood next to Izuku. Izuku. So, successful first day, right? Hato. Yeah, usually patrols are all boring with no action, which is good. Your luck your first day had something happen. With that, Izuku's work study had just started. Relationship. It was night and had been a week since the first day of 1A's work studies, well, for the students that had them. Ryukyu was stood on top of her agency, waiting for her students to return. As she waited, she pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app, opening a specific file. Frowning, she began to type. Ryukyu. Uraraka and Ajui seem very enthusiastic about this work study. The fact that they wanted one and accepted my invitation means that don't care about being away from UA. The mole most likely isn't either of them. She hated that she had to consider her own students, but even more so, she was frustrated that she couldn't completely rule them out. This work study would be a good cover after all. She heard something land behind her and turned around to see Izuku jumping off an almost invisible bird. He walked over and stood next to her. Ryukyu. Where are the others? Izuku. Last I saw them, they were helping arrest a drug dealer with a gigantification quirk. Ryukyu. Hato's probably showing Uravity and Froppy how to do the paperwork. She leaned her head onto his shoulder. Ryukyu. It's a nice night at least. Izuku. Yeah. They were about to grab each other's hands when the door to the roof opened, making the two quickly separate in surprise. Turning around, they noticed it was Ryuko's secretary, Ms. Bortiski. Ryukyu. Oh, Ms. Bortiski, are you leaving for the night? The woman nodded. Bortisku. Yes. Though I would like to warn you. Today's group of protesters is larger than normal. Be careful. Ryukyu nodded. Ryukyu. I will, my friend. Have a good night. Her employee nodded and left the roof. Izuku and Ryukyu looked back at each other. Izuku. I hate that we have to hide this. Ryukyu. I do too, but we both know the consequences of our relationship becoming public. Izuku nodded. He then walked up to her and wrapped his arms around her. Izuku. I love you, Ryukyu. I really do. She reciprocated the hug. Ryukyu. I know you do. And I love you too, Izuku. They shared a kiss. Izuku. I do wish I could show you how much I love you without us having to go out and potentially out ourselves. Ryukyu. I might have an idea. Across the roof, 3 people who arrived silently stood, watching the two. Tsu. What do we do? Kero. Uraraka. I don't know. We should get back, but this is too cute. Hato. Let's give them a few more seconds. The 3 then took note of something. Hato. They're kissing again. Tsu. That looks awfully rough for a kiss. Uraraka. And she's lifting his shirt. We should stop them. Hato. Right. The 5 were now inside Ryuko's office. It had been 5 minutes of awkward silence. Ryukyu then cleared her throat and began to speak. Ryukyu. I hope today has been enlightening for us. I have several reports from the police of successful captures. I also hope that today's events have taught us all valuable lessons. The others nodded, though Hato was trying not to laugh. Her efforts having been in vain when she noticed the disheveled hair Ryukyu was sporting. Her boss and teacher gave her an annoyed look which made her calm down after a few seconds. Ryukyu. I also have an announcement. On Monday next week, we will be going to Sir Nitai's agency to attend a meeting to discuss a team-up request. So be ready. So be ready, understood? She got confirmation from all 4 students. Ryukyu. Good. You're all dismissed. Except you, Izuku. We need to talk. The 3 she allowed to leave did, but stayed near the door after it closed. Uraraka. You don't think? Hato. Definitely. Tsu. Let's go. Uraraka. Agreed. The 3 left. Back in Ryuko's office, Izuku stood in front of her desk. Izuku. You, what is it? Ryuko sighed. Ryukyu. Izuku. We almost had Hex on the roof. Don't get me wrong, I hated being interrupted too, but we're lucky they were the only ones that saw. Izuku walked around her desk and knelt next to her chair. Izuku, you're right. We have to be more careful. Ryukyu, no, just less careless. We need to stop getting comfortable outside just because we think we're alone. There are 3 places that are safe for us. This building, the 1A dorms, and my apartment. When we aren't there, we need to be on our toes when it comes to, well, us. Izuku nodded. Izuku, yeah. I can do that. He kissed her cheek. Izuku, now we should probably head back to the dorms. He stood and she got up from her chair. Ryukyu, you're right. After this, I just want to lay down and sleep. Izuku smiled and took her hand. Izuku, but let's go. She nodded and the two left the agency. Meeting. Monday morning the next week, Class 1A was getting ready to leave the dorms when 5 of them got texts in their phones. Izuku pulled his out to find it was from Ryukyu. Ryukyu, you and the others are coming in today for the meeting. Find your way to the Night Eye Agency. Your costumes are unneeded. Izuku looked to Uraraka and Tsu, who also looked at him, and each other. Izuku quickly tapped on Ida's shoulder, who then turned around. Ida. Midoriya, what is it? Izuku. Me, Uraraka, and Tsu have been called in. Could you tell Mr. Aizawa? Ida smiled and nodded. Ida. Of course, as class rep it's my duty to inform our teacher that you'll be missing. Kirishima and Sero walked over too. Kirishima. I'll be gone too, man. Fadgum has a meeting he wants me at. Sero. Same here. Ida. No problem, I suggest you all get moving before you're late. I'll inform Yayorozu in case you all want to go over today's lessons. Good luck. With that said, he turned and quickly left to catch up to the class. Uraraka and Tsu walked over. Uraraka. You two have meetings too? Tsu. What a coincidence. Kero. Sero. Well, kinda. Night Eye is hosting some big team-up meeting. Kirishima. Night Eye? That's where Fat wants me. Izuku. Same with us. I could fly us there with a couple monsters. Uraraka. I mean, we do have our licenses, and being late to a meeting could be an emergency. Sero. I like the sound of that, let's do it. Izuku smiled as he reeved into his power deck. Izuku. Actually, just one will work, as long as a couple people are okay with being carried instead of riding. Kirishima. Me and Uraraka should be carried then. I could survive a fall and she can just float. Uraraka, right. Izuku. Alright then. I summoned Stealth Bird. Izuku pulled a card from the deck and in a flash of light, a large, nearly invisible bird appeared. Izuku, hop on. He, Sero, and Tsu jumped onto its back. Izuku. Pick up those two and head north. Izuku spoke to the bird and it did as he commanded it to. It picked up Uraraka and Kirishima before flying north. Half an hour later. The bird landed on a roof, dropping Uraraka and Kirishima before disappearing, letting its riders drop onto the roof. Izuku. So Sero, how close are we? Sero checked his phone. Sero. Just a block away, let's go. He immediately turned around and dropped into an alley between buildings, the others following him. As they walked, Tsu spoke up. Tsu. Midoriya, I have a question. Izuku. What is it, Tsu? Tsu. When you summoned that bird, you didn't even look at your deck. Why is that? Kero. Izuku. It's an ability I'm trying to master. Truthfully, it only works like 10% of the time. Sometimes I can tell what card is next, or maybe I can call a specific card to the top. Either way, like I said, it rarely works. Kirishima. Still, that sounds amazing for fights. They continued to talk until they made it to the agency, where they saw the big 3 standing outside. Izuku. So we were right. It's the same meeting. They walked over to their upperclassmen and said hello when they heard another voice behind them. Aizawa. I had a feeling. They turned around to find Mr. Aizawa had arrived too. Kirishima. Whoa, even you're here? Aizawa. Yes, and by judging the fact none of you were on the train, it's safe to say that Midoriya brought you all here, right? He walked up to Izuku and looked in his eyes for a few moments before shrugging. Aizawa. It's only logical. Now, we shouldn't keep them waiting. Also, it's Eraserhead here. He walked past his students and into the building. The UA students quickly followed him inside and to a meeting room. Each quickly found their work-study employers and sat near them, Izuku having gotten to the seat next to Ryukyu before Hato. Soon, Night Eye appeared and took his place at the front of the room in front of a large screen. Night Eye. Welcome. Today we're here to organize a team-up operation against this man. He gestured towards the screen behind him as an image appeared on it. Night Eye. Kaichisaki, aka Overhaul.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.